Vinicius, Bellingham, Messi, Neymar, they would rather play elsewhere. Why?
That's a very good question. I don't think there's as many superstars today as the kind of has been in the past. Obviously, Messi, Ronaldo were the two superstars, and no one could get anywhere near them. And that doesn't mean to say that others like Neymar and Luis Suarez weren't. What I would say is, I think Real Madrid's, whatever you say about Manchester United, even when they're at their pomp, that I think are the biggest club in the world, the most attractive club in the world. You could argue maybe even Madrid in terms of just living there as well, I think is incredible. Barcelona too. You think about that Barcelona team of Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Puyol, just absolutely sensational. And you look at Real Madrid now, Vinny Jr., Mbappe, Bellingham. Who else have I missed? I think the general ones, they've always had the very, very top ones have probably gone to La Liga and Real Madrid. Whereas the Premier League, it's almost like the next section down, but deep.
talkSPORT Sports Update powered by the Nissan Van range. Commercial vehicles built around your business. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van centre.
With your headlines, it just gone 1 minute past 10. I'm Nick Ellaby. Good morning. Is Roberto De Zerbi the right man to get Spurs through this relegation scrap? European football expert Dougie Critchley says he was great at developing players when he took Brighton to 6th.
He does have an amazing reputation for improving clubs, but over the short term, it's an entirely new style of play that might take a little while for the Spurs players to adapt to.
Well, they've only got 7 games to avoid the drop. Andy Townsend doesn't think the Spurs players have the stomach.
Most of them have looked like they've chucked it. Most of them have. Because, look, the truth of the matter is, if you're a player nowadays of some repute and they've got plenty of players in that bracket,
they'll be away.
The easiest way for them to get out of the club is if they
100%.
get relegated.
More on the incoming appointment at talksport.com. Now, Newcastle say they have no plans to replace Eddie Howe before the end of the season. Chief Exec David Hopkinson says he'll talk about the future when it's time. He was speaking after revealing Newcastle's latest financial results, which showed an after-tax profit of £34.7 million. Daylight offsides are being trialled in the Canadian Premier League from this Saturday. The idea is to restore some advantage to the attackers. Critics say it'll just mean defences dropping deeper. And veteran of 2 World Cups with England, John Barnes, isn't bothered about players dropping out of this camp because he says we already know more or less who Tuchel's taking to the World Cup.
Not to rule people out, but fans get excited about players who may do well and then feel he should be in the England team, he should be in the England team, but we really know who should be in the England team.
With one more game to prove their worth, England versus Japan is live on talkSPORT from 7 p.m.
talkSPORT News. talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. With over 600 centres across the UK, most of which open 7 days a week, we're always there when you need us. QuickFit. Drive away happy every time.
In the news, junior doctors say they're keen to talk to ministers after being given an ultimatum by the Prime Minister. 3 teens have been charged with the murder of a 16-year-old girl in Leeds. Emma has more on that in half an hour. In the weather, mostly cloudy with patchy rain, brightening up this afternoon. A few showers around, very mild, windy in the north.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Jim White and Simon Jordan. We are live on talkSPORT. So, Roberto De Zerbi, 5 years or 7 games. Should it really matter to Spurs? Do desperate times call for desperate measures? Meanwhile, after years of division, are the IOC made right to take a universal approach on transgender athletes in sport? Also today, are UEFA showing FIFA that affordability is a choice? What has football learned from Emiliano Sala's death? Do broadcasters take liberties? Where next for Craig Bellamy? And is Oliver Glasner right to have no regrets this season? The Palace manager. You'll hear from him later this morning. Jim White and Simon Jordan were live in talkSPORT.
100% engagement.
Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
When you walk down from Waterloo Station, that big long road you walk down is Southwark Road, right?
Yes.
I was walking down it this morning, and an individual on a bike with a mask on, Simon, roars right by me on the pavement. And I could see it as clear as day. Approaches a fellow from behind who's on his phone, whips his phone, and carried on. And the chap drops his bag and pursues him. The next thing, the cyclist tosses the phone in the air, presumably because you couldn't get into it if you're listening, you horrible individual. Tossed it in the air, and the lad recovered his phone. But the trauma that caused that fella this morning, I chatted to him for a moment or two. He was going into the Bluefin building, if you know where I am around that area. I hope he's settled down and
I had it done to me
a decent morning.
I had it done to me years ago.
Did you?
I was walking down the road
with that and worse.
Yeah, with the gun and things. But I had it with in Fitzroy Square on the phone. Some kid on the bike just bang punched me in the side of the head and grabbed the phone. So Michelle's always on at me about carrying a phone properly and not put it in your back pocket and
I know.
Else.
Yeah, but, you never know the moment. But I'm glad the fella got his phone back. I just wish I'd been ahead of the guy and seen the cyclist coming my way.
Oh, yeah. What would you have done then?
Because the Glasgow would have come out at me. Good morning, everybody. Quite a night last night, Simon. I was in an area that you no doubt know, Mount Street up in Mayfair.
Very much so. Around the corner from the Grosvenor, where I used to live.
Beautiful area. Yeah. I was in Scots in Mayfair last night.
Frank Warren's favourite halt.
In the company of Brighton Chief Executive Paul Barber, who is the chairman of the trustees of Football Beyond Borders, an education charity that uses the power of football to engage and support young people. And I was thrilled to host that event last night. The great and the good from the world of football were there. Rick Parry was there from the EFL. As I said, Paul was there. He brought along Fabian Hürzeler, his manager. Oliver Glasner was there.
Old enough to go into a licensed establishment, Fabian.
He was great. Did a Q&A. A young lad, Callum, spoke as well.
Asking about Arsenal.
He's done ever so well, has Callum. Oliver Glasner has done a chat with me, and you'll hear that later on this morning. No regrets about what he said during the season. I like Glasner immensely, and I'm sure you'll be impressed by what you hear later on this morning, Simon. And also a gentleman, he wasn't exactly asking for you, but by God, he delivered, both on the stage in front of the audience and for us in a chat coming up. It gives us his view on the World Cup and on the president of the US of A, and he is Alastair Campbell. You're going to enjoy that. Alastair Campbell is coming your way.
A weasel amongst weasels.
He was magnificent. I know that you don't exchange Christmas cards. He's as much a fan of yours as you are of him, but that's by the by. And you'll be hearing from Alastair Campbell. Roberto De Zerbi, 5 years or 7 games. Does it really matter? We hear this morning, Simon, Spurs remain in talks with De Zerbi for him to join the club now as opposed to the summer. There's a 5-year deal on the table, making him, or would make him, the third highest paid manager in the Premier League, behind only Guardiola and Arteta. It's understood De Zerbi has no interest in managing in the Championship. Really? Although there has been a reluctance from Spurs to include any relegation release clause in the contract. Is there any need, Simon, for Spurs to be worrying about the long term before securing the short term?
What state Spurs have got themselves in terms of having to be held up against the wall and absolutely metaphorically bent over by a manager that doesn't really stay anywhere for longer than 2 years at the best of times. Pay him, if this is indeed what's being reported and has accuracy attached to it, to be the third highest manager in the Premier League without actually having done that much as a manager, besides a few decent performances at Brighton for a period of time, a little bit of a performance at Shakhtar Donetsk, and a little bit of a performance at Marseille, all of them resulting in everyone falling out with him and him being shuffled out the door, one way or t'other. What a state Spurs have got themselves in. Yeah, they do, because I don't know why they want to give him a 5-year contract. I don't know why anyone would want to be handing out 5-year contracts to managers that you don't have a relationship with. I get the fact that you want him for 2 or 3 years, and what's the difference between 3 and 5 years? Probably about 10 million quid by the sounds of this particular contract. Spurs have got themselves into such a situation now where they're in such a difficult position because the ramifications of relegation are so incomprehensible, not just to the revenue streams that Stefan Borson was describing, because they can patch that up by selling players and reducing wage bills and the parachute payments kicking in for half of the liability. But the overall value of Spurs and the mission statement that they have, despite their protestations, is to sell it. This will just decimate any value, because the one thing that they decided to make sure that everyone knew when Spurs is for sale, relegation, not for Tottenham Hotspur, that doesn't happen. We are guaranteed franchise of the Premier League. So the ramifications for Spurs are huge. So they'll have to get this clown in to fix a problem for the next 7 games and give him an absolute king's ransom to do it.
Yeah.
And then guaranteed in 18 months' time, fall out with him.
Yeah, but if he comes in now, and they don't drop to the Championship, he's no clown, not in Tottenham's eyes.
Well, no, of course not. He'll be their saviour. But they'll all be clowns together. They'll be all riding around the same car. But the fact is that they are being held. Their feet are being held to the fire. These are the commercial negotiations that go on inside football, and they put themselves in such an invidious position that they're going to have their pants pulled down, metaphorically, and their little botties spanked blue. By De Zerbi.
Considering he holds all the cards, and he does, is there anything wrong with protectionism? A relegation clause on De Zerbi's part, that's a fair ask.
Isn't it? Well, it would appear to me, as a commercial animal, this is the ultimate in negotiating with your chin. Right? Just give him what he wants. Yeah, you want to come live in my house? Yeah. Want to take my wife out? Yeah, take her out as well. Do what you want. Just keep us in the division.
Danny Murphy said his bit last night. He was in kick-off. He's not sure about De Zerbi's appointment as and when it happens.
I like the fact he's quite strong-minded and stands his ground and says his piece. That means he's got some strength. Some people could argue he's too contentious and causes problems everywhere he go. If we're one hand talking about the frailties of Thomas Frank and leadership and being strong, he's certainly the opposite of that. We know the Tottenham fans demand a certain style of play.
Style of play right now
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Correct, but he's not. It doesn't matter. Is he?
I
think if he goes in there and tries to get them playing like his Brighton team did, they could go down.
Oh boy! Now that was Danny last night, Simon. The fact of the matter is, Spurs, they're in a tricky position, are they not? And it's of their own doing.
They're right in the brown stuff. They're not in a tricky position. They're neck deep in it.
Yeah.
And they've got to get out of it, because it's not just a case of getting relegated and, we'll come back in a year's time. This is not Newcastle getting relegated under Mike Ashley and Rafa Benitez staying and holding the fort. This is a club that was trying to get £3.5 billion to be sold. This is a club that's the founder member of the Premier League and the founder thinker of the Premier League. This is a club that's built a stadium which is effectively the best stadium probably in the world of sports. And if they're in the Championship, forget about it. That's a massive problem. Now, will they bounce back? Most likely.
Yeah.
But the ramifications for it, they will have just taken, and they've in part already done it. Tony Godden has just passed away. He was a great goalkeeper, wasn't he?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They have taken this huge opportunity of convincing the world that the Premier League doesn't lose people like Tottenham Hotspur, so that underpins their value to people around the world, like the Americans and perhaps the Middle Eastern guys that might want to buy it.
Yeah.
And they've just shown their backsides, and now they're in a serious position. They can only make it worse by actually getting relegated. Now, if that is indeed what De Zerbi... Every aspect of my commercial mindset bristles against the idea that this is not a negotiation. This isn't a commercial discussion. This is Tottenham Hotspur being told what they're going to do by a manager. That won't sit well in the longer game.
No.
Because he will get...
You're never allowed to be manoeuvred into a situation like that.
You do get manoeuvred in situations.
But they've got no choice.
They've manoeuvred themselves into it.
Yeah.
So as a matter of course, as a typical football scenario, just throw everything at it and try and create an outcome. Doesn't matter about the long-term situation. I don't think he should be getting a 5-year contract, and I certainly don't think the saucy sod should be getting a relegation get-out-of-jail card. But he will, and they will, and they'll do it. And so they might as well get on with it. Just give him what he wants.
But why say goodbye to Igor Tudor without having secured De Zerbi?
Well, I
don't get it.
Well, I suspect it might have been a two-way transaction in this conversation. Igor Tudor may be very, very distracted by the tragedy in his life. And he may well have come away from these circumstances, because these things do create a reaction in people, which is, I don't need this.
Of course.
I don't need this. This is not enjoyable for me. I've just lost my father.
Yeah.
I've got this job over here, which is toxic and going to hell in a handcart.
Yeah.
And I don't need 3 months' money.
Levy's gone. The managers are gone. They're manager-less at the moment. Where might the drop, if they go down, leave the likes of the new chief executive, Vinay, ex-Arsenal, Vinay Venkatesham, and the sporting director, Johan Lang? Where might it leave them if they plummet?
Well, I should imagine they'll be well looked after by the Lewis family. That's what they do, don't they? They're a very empathetic little crowd. So there's a consequence in the same way that the Rangers hierarchy made their decisions, brought on their managers, communicated with the media. The 49ers who allowed the current management to stay in place, they binned them.
Yeah.
When they started to get some ramifications to the decisions that they were making.
Yeah.
You can't turn around to the board of directors that have made appointments and say, well done, you put us in the championship.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, whether they get jumped or they get pushed depends. I mean, they might see it as a challenge to come back and rebuild. If they ever wanted to exercise the spirit of Daniel Levy, they'd have done it in the championship, wouldn't they?
As soon as we know, you'll know. No appointment yet, as of yet, of Roberto De Zerbi. Paul Barber at the dinner last night, of course, used to employ De Zerbi at Brighton. You'll hear from him later on the man De Zerbi himself. But we shall see, and as I say, as soon as we know, you will know once and when De Zerbi is announced. In the meantime, interesting noises coming out of Newcastle United this morning. Stay with us. We're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Derek Chisora's retiring after this weekend, so maybe Del Boy can come in and do a better job than all these other guys.
Maybe.
I've also spoken to him. He's going to come in and walk up and down Simon's back this morning to try and sort that out.
Jason Schiff, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Simon. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Well, I wish you back better anyway.
Thank you, mate.
My view is that I think that we need to bring a manager in that's going to sign a contract so the players believe that manager is going to be there next season. I don't think it's a great look when you sign these managers up and they're only signed temporarily, because then all of a sudden the players don't seem to have the same respect for that manager, because they're thinking, well, he's not going to be here in a few weeks. Do I think that this guy can come in and do a job? I certainly hope so. I think the fans are behind the players at the moment. I think I saw an amazing atmosphere, even though we lost 3-0. And I just think this is still the team that got 4 points out of City this season. So the players in that squad that are capable of winning games, but we do need a manager that's capable of getting the best out of them.
Yeah, I mean, you're on your final chance, are you not, Jason? It's critical now.
Listen, it's almost not in our hands, because if West Ham get that win, then all of a sudden we're in this position where we're looking.
Jason, just
around us.
Just a quick one here. So there's an element of concern about De Zerbi. Do you share that concern? And who would you?
Good morning, everybody. Last day of March, Tuesday, March the 31st. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We are live on talkSPORT. You're going to hear from Oliver Glasner later on this morning. You're going to hear from Simon's best pal, Alastair Campbell, Burnley fan. You're going to hear from Paul Barber, the Brighton chief executive. A whole bunch of people coming your way later on this morning. Simon, it's understood Eddie Howe met with chief executive David Hopkinson last week to discuss strategies ahead, depending on where Newcastle United finish in the Premier League. The reality of the club's finances and missing out in the Champions League means that they will have to sell to buy. Mm-hmm. Now, we spoke with Hopkinson when we were up there recently, and I shall get to that. But on this more recently, speaking at the presentation of the club's latest accounts, David Hopkinson told reporters, "I don't have a stance on Eddie's future. What I can tell you is that the Derby loss, they lost 2-1 at home to Sunderland in March there, it hurt. We take it seriously. There's nothing within us that thinks, well, it's just 3 points and on we go. It resonated. I spent a couple of hours in a one-to-one lunch recently with Eddie, and we talked through a multitude of things, including that. Eddie's our manager. I expect to have a great run to the end of the season here, and we'll talk about the future when it's time. Right now, we're focused on this season's competition." For Hopkinson to say to reporters, "I don't have a stance on Eddie Howe's future," Simon, does that raise an eyebrow as far as you're concerned? Is it normal not to have a stance on the future of your manager? And if you do, why tell reporters?
Well, I don't know what his remit is. Is he solely responsible for the hiring and firing of managers? Because that might be someone else's responsibility. That might be the actual ownership model that decides whether they're going to do that or not. I would imagine that there must be some significant input from the CEO, whose football knowledge is what, whose football expertise is what. So it's interesting to see whether the blind will be leading the deaf in that situation. I don't think it's the greatest thing he's ever said. It's fascinating to see. Very grown up to have a manager in discussions. Shows you what Eddie Howe's capable of, because a lot of his managers, you could put an abacus in front of them, they wouldn't know how to move the beads across. He'll be able to understand the difference between the financial affairs and the ramifications of the decisions that have been made by his performances on the field.
Yeah.
Because they're going to sell Tonali, they're going to sell gimme areas, they're going to sell players, which then goes into the face of how do they get this side to be a 2030 meaningful side? How do they do it? It's all well and good putting out these, statements like politicians do, net zero or whatever it is, but no one actually tells you how you're going to actually do it and the ramifications of it and the consequences and what the journey is, because that's too much detail and that's too much scrutiny and they can't stand it up. They can just throw out these platitudes. Because in my view, despite my admiration for Newcastle United as a football club, and we've had our differences over the years about things I've said and haven't said, but notwithstanding that, I respect them as a football club. Yeah. If they're going to get to 2030 having won something, they're going to have to change the direction of travel that they're going on massively. Only way to do it is build a stadium. Only way to do it is keep their best players. So if you're going to sell your best players... Now, if he's talking about the circumstances that were unveiled with the selling of Elliot Anderson and people of that nature, that will again frustrate Eddie, because you can't develop young players that come through into the team because other people are going to get them, Lewis Hall, Livramento, whoever else they've got up for potential grabs that potentially other clubs might want to buy because they like the idea of Newcastle's players. Look, to not have a stance on your manager is probably the wrong terminology. To not be prepared to discuss your manager's future at this moment in time, that will set the hairs running, but I think it's a little bit better, marginally, a tad better than saying you don't have a stance.
Well, exactly, Simon. So he's saying in this right now, I don't have a stance on Eddie's future. We were up there days ago when you were down here having a scrap with Deontay Wilder. And Hopkinson was talking about Eddie Howe and his 2030 vision that he has with Eddie in the hot seat.
Eddie's our manager. Eddie's an extraordinary manager. We just talked about how much he's envied by other clubs and the national program. So with all due respect to Simon, I could not disagree more. And then I guess he won't be going to work with Simon anytime soon. But Eddie's our man, and he has our total support here. Eddie's been a phenomenal partner to me since the day I met him. He certainly seems like a man very focused on what he's doing at Newcastle. His work rate is incredible. I really like the partnership that I have with him, that Ross has with him. So Eddie consistently indicates to us how happy he is here. Again, I see someone operating with high conviction. And look, I'm someone who I pay a lot of attention to what people say, but I pay even more attention to what they do. And I see someone very leaned in and very focused.
Now, I mean, that was just earlier this month.
Good, we'll watch him then.
I noticed I was wearing the same jersey then as I'm wearing today, which I apologise for. But, I mean, he's talking up Eddie there. I don't have a stance. Now he's saying, I don't have a stance on Eddie. We're not looking to make a change at the moment. I mean, that's a significant change in tone in a matter, Simon, of days.
Well, take him at his word. Don't watch what people say, watch what they do. So we'll watch what you do, because we'll see if you're around in 2030. I don't know whether this is a management style that is effective or whether it's going to achieve the outcomes. I think it's playing to the gallery. We're deeply wounded by the Sunderland loss. Right. So if you finished sixth in the league, you'd carry the baggage of the Sunderland loss all season, would you? No, you wouldn't. You forget about it. You go, can't have that happen again, by the way. So that little bit is for the benefit of the fans. That's ingratiating with, I feel the way you do. Oh, you do you?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
The fact is that you lost to Sunderland and you move on and try to fry bigger fish. Next year, we'll see if Sunderland can maintain this level. Because what happens with teams that get promoted, they have a really good first season, a lot of them. Second season, they get caught up with. We'll see about Sunderland in the future. This not having a stance on Eddie Howe, I don't know whether it's wise moves or whether he's changed his mind or whether that's the style that they operate in, which they don't commit to the media about any direction that they're going to go in. I understand why they wouldn't want to, because there's nothing to be said. If he turns around and says, no, he's our manager for the long term, he's going to be greeted with the shortcomings of this season. If he says, I'm going to think about his future, they're going to be greeted about the rumours about Eddie Howe's position. If you say you've got no stance on it, we're going to be... So whatever he says, he's going to have a cul-de-sac moment. So the best thing he can do is tell people how he's going to deliver the 2030 vision, which he's given no detail of.
Yeah.
The fact that I've said for 4 years, with no disrespect to Eddie Howe intended...
No, I know.
That it's and the reasons why I say it is not because Eddie Howe is not a capable manager, it's because they can't do it. They can't do it. Unless someone tells me how they're going to do it, they cannot catch Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea... I was going to say Spurs, but not for the purpose of this conversation. They cannot catch them economically.
Yeah.
How are they going to do it? How are they going to do it? Because the only way they can do it is increase the revenue streams to be able to buy the best players and keep them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Do you envisage a tricky old summer for Newcastle United?
Well, I imagine a difficult time for a whole raft of reasons. If you're selling... Now, people will say sometimes you have to sell players to refresh, and no club survives only on one decent player or two or three decent players, but they do build the best sides around them. So if you suddenly develop these wonderful players into actually being very, very good in English football, like Tonali, who got himself into all kinds of trouble, didn't he? And the reward for them with Tonali is that he'll go off somewhere else. And Guimaraes will potentially go as well. I mean, they'll keep the players that they bought, like Voldemar and people like that, because no other bugger will want them. But the bottom line is that I don't see how it can't be a difficult summer. I don't see how Eddie can't be more frustrated, because in order to overcome the shortcomings of this season, they need to improve. Now, unless they're going to deploy all of that money and it becomes a balance sheet exercise around profitability and then buying better players for the future, who are the better players than Tonali? Who are the better players than Guimaraes? Because they had Isak in the building. They've sold Isak for 125, 150 million quid. Why are they needing to sell further players?
Yeah. Okay, we were up there, as you all know, on that particular day. We through BetMGM, and it was quite a trip, actually. We gleaned a lot of information while we were up at Newcastle United, no doubt. Next time we go, we will do exactly the same. It is 10:30 on this Tuesday morning. We're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Back on Thursday, Simon and Willie exchanged a fair bit of banter in the boxing hour on that day going into the fight.
I said I think you're going to get beat, is what I said, Willie.
Is that what you said?
I did, yeah. I did. I'm happy to eat crow.
Simon, have you ever boxed a day in your life?
No, I haven't, no.
You should have no comment on boxing whatsoever. You should leave it to the boxers.
We will see.
Because you've never had a fight in your life.
We will see. And when you have an opinion on something in life that you've never done, we can have a conversation about that as well.
The only thing you can box, Simon, listen to me. The only thing you can box is box in Tesco's shopping centre. Well, that's what you can box.
Willie, if you lose that fight, you'll probably be working in there.
You shouldn't give any... Hey, but I've got plenty.
Good.
I don't need to
well,
go
let's
anywhere.
see you win.
I don't do this for the money. I do it for peace.
Good, fantastic, good. So when we see on Monday, if you've won, you'll be able to say all this. But don't lose, Willie, now. Don't lose. Whatever you do, don't lose.
But Simon, if you've never boxed a day in your life, and you've never felt a punch in your face, you should have no comment to boxing.
I'm not allowed an opinion.
In your life.
I'm not allowed an opinion.
Forget about this.
I'm not allowed
You're
an
not
opinion.
Allowed an opinion because you've never boxed.
Okay.
You don't know.
All right. Well, hopefully my opinion will mean nothing.
Keep to the
Willie,
football.
But if I'm wrong, if I'm right, Willie, you are going to eat some crow, buddy.
Well, he didn't need to eat anything because the scores were wide, 99, 91, 98, 92, 98, 92. So, Willie, you got out that shift at Tesco on Sunday. Well done. Good morning.
Definitely. I got out of it nice and clear. Thank God I don't need to work in Tesco's no more. And we're on to the next one.
Life after football. For a lot of players, it means going into punditry. Some turn to coaching or working in the game in other ways. But what about the rest? Some former footballers turn their sights away from the game, and there are a few big surprises. First up, from rainbow flicks to pancake flips. Ex-Chelsea and Southampton defender Ken Monku switched up his footballing career to buy a Dutch pancake house. Next, Everton legend Thomas Gravesen swapped out the high stakes of the Premier League for those of the poker room. Turned out the Danish international was pretty darn good at poker. He racked up a reported £100 million from his Las Vegas adventures. Remember former Chelsea goalkeeper Petr Cech? Turns out football nets weren't the only goals he was pretty handy in front of. After retirement, he became a goaltender in ice hockey. Same skills, very different surface. It's not all glamour for ex-pros, though. 1966 World Cup winner Ray Wilson set up a very different kind of business. He became an undertaker after he retired. Finally, not many people can say they've won both a World Cup and starred in an Oscar-winning film. In fact, there's only one person in the entire world who can say that. Frank Leboeuf had already begun acting on the side while he was playing football, and his biggest role came some years after his retirement when he landed the part of a doctor in the Stephen Hawking biopic The Theory of Everything. To be honest, with all the dramatic diving in the game these days, there's probably tons of ex-pros who've got the acting skills to make it in Hollywood.
Good morning, everybody. Just gone 10:30 this Tuesday morning. Last day of March. Jim White and Simon Jordan, and we are live on talkSPORT. A lot to get through this morning. The International Olympic Committee has now agreed to a new policy for the 2028 LA Olympics, which will see transgender women athletes banned from female events, with eligibility determined by athletes taking a sex test to prove their gender. Now, the IOC president is Kirsty Coventry, And Kirsty said the policy came from the result of a review that was led by medical experts.
Today, we, the International Olympic Committee, have published a policy on the protection of the female category. The policy that we have announced is based on science, and it has been led by medical experts with the best interests of athletes at its heart. The scientific evidence is very clear. Male chromosomes give performance advantages in sports that rely on strength, power, or endurance. At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category. In addition, in some sports, it would simply not be safe. Every athlete must be treated with dignity and respect, and athletes will only need to be screened once in their lifetime.
So eligibility will be determined by athletes having to partake in a sex test, as I said, to essentially prove their gender. Eligibility for the female category would be determined by a screening to detect the SRY gene. Now, that is part of the Y chromosome and causes male characteristics to develop. Simon, joining us in this discussion is Sue Wong from Scene in Sport, who campaign for fairness, safety, equity in women's sport. And also on the line is Becky Thompson, journalist and expert on transgender participation in sport, who previously led CNN's reporting on the issue at the Tokyo Olympics. Sue, shall I start with you? After years of divisiveness on this topic, has sport made the right choice in landing with a clear, universal approach? What do you think?
Absolutely. It should not be contentious that women's sports should be for women only. This is a great decision from the IOC, finally protecting the female category. And what's more, it doesn't just impact the Olympic athletes, it also affects ordinary women and girls who just want fair and safe sport. Because for too long, international federations, national governing bodies have used this IOC policy as a justification to allow males into female sports. And this ends now. I'm so pleased that IOC are highlighting the importance of fairness, safety, and the integrity of the female category. We know male advantage exists. The IOC policy made it very clear. 10 to 12% in running and swimming, 20% plus in throwing and jumping, over 100% plus in implosive power, like collision, punching, lifting sports. And they also made it very clear the scientific evidence says there is no evidence that suppression of testosterone or any other methods completely eliminates male advantage. This is what we've been waiting for, and this is what the female athletes have also been waiting for. Great news.
Sue, thanks for that. Becky Thompson, good morning to you. Is it as clear-cut, Becky, as Sue is making out?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as clear-cut as that. I do think that this ruling isn't actually as clear and decisive as the Olympic Committee have said it is. They have said that this is only for Olympic sport and not for recreational sport. That being said, as Sue does point out, recreational sport will look to the IOC's policy on this for guidance on the topic, and that will lead to people questioning women's gender, looking at people's bodies and making assumptions about who they are, and that for self-proclaimed gender police effectively on the topic. And I do think that will lead to women being put in more vulnerable positions and not really protecting women and not really creating a fair environment either.
Where do you stand on it, Simon?
Just out of curiosity, why will it put women in more difficult and invidious positions?
I think it's safe to say that women have been subjected to a lot of assumptions, policies, intense scrutiny over their lifetimes as athletes. We've seen it with bans of women's football. We've seen it with how people have been treated throughout the years. And sport has never truly been fair. If sport was fair, we would ban people like Michael Phelps from competing in sport as well. So I think that this will lead to more people being questioned on who they are based on looks alone. Women who are strong, women of color will be questioned on who they are at recreational levels as well. Meanwhile, at Olympic levels, we've only had one trans woman ever compete in the Olympic Games, which was back in the Tokyo Olympics, and failed all of her lifts in her category as well. In Paris 2024, we had no transgender women competing. So policies like this will lead to more women at grassroots and recreational level being scrutinized for their looks alone.
Sue,
Actually, I completely disagree.
I was going to say, Sue, what would you say to Becky's observations there?
Well, first of all, this is about eligibility for the female category. This is not about trans athletes.
Exactly.
Can we all remember the 800 meters podium for the women's category at the Rio Olympics? They were entirely DSD males. And this is about protecting the females. And you talk about saying, oh, well, policing women's bodies or what they look like. Absolutely not. We all know, and the IOC made it clear, it's universally acknowledged that you have to accept that there is a female category. And to do so, how do we determine who is eligible and who isn't? For example, when you have weight categories, athletes need to be weighed to make sure they're eligible. So there has to be some kind of screening. The SOI screening is completely non-invasive. It's a simple cheek swab. You do that once in your lifetime. That is much better. And then anyone who qualifies to be in the female category, there will be no judging on what a woman looks like, because everybody will know they are eligible to compete.
Becky, I'll let you come back on that. I'll let you come back on that, Becky.
Yeah, I would like to say that the problem with that is that recreational and grassroots level sport won't have access to these sex tests. They won't have access to this test, which is what leads to the policing on it. I'm not disagreeing that the test is less invasive and that it could be useful at elite levels of sport and that maybe there should be rules at elite levels of sport. But these rules will still affect grassroots level sport. And you talk about DSD athletes. These are athletes who are born assigned female at birth with a genetic condition. And if we're going to start policing genetic conditions, then yeah, ban people like Michael Phelps, who was born with size 14 feet that act like flippers, right? There's so many athletes who have genetic advantages in sport. Sport has never inherently been fair. Otherwise, we would hand out participation medals to everyone. I mean, so if you're going to do that, then you need to talk about different people's advantages as well.
On that point, Sue, is this not going to lead to the arrival of gender police, if you like, from elite sport to grassroots?
It's exactly the opposite. Once you agree that women's sport needs to be female only, and you need to understand that only females need to be there, has to be a mechanism for determining who is eligible. Obviously, the SRY, that works at elite level. But if all of the grassroots policies, if all of the national governing bodies make it very clear that what has happened in the last 20-odd years is no longer acceptable, that there is no cause to allow males into women's sports, then you will stop having this so-called policing, because males will not be trying to get into women's sports. It will be seen that you need to be in the sport eligible for your sex. And please remember, this is not about policing or anything like that. That's a really bizarre phrase. We don't say, oh, well, are we going to police the heavyweights so they don't get into the lightweight category? You know, are we policing adults so they don't compete in children's category? No, sport is inclusive because you can compete at any level, but you must be in the correct category. If there weren't any males trying to compete in women's sports, no one would be worried. And in fact, most of us, you know, those of us older than a certain age will remember that there are always women who are gender non-conforming or who are very strong or who are very, you know, can look in many different ways.
Yeah.
People didn't question them when there wasn't a possibility that there could be males in the sport. I mean, so this is great news for women's sport.
This is absolute
at
clarity.
all levels.
All the governing bodies, including governments, have been absolutely morally bankrupt in their cowardice about how they deal with this. I spoke to Sebastian Coe 2 years ago, who was quite clear about his view on it, about the participation, particularly of transgender athletes, into women's sport. There is very little doubt that there is a material advantage having been born a man and wanting to transition in transgender debates. There is no debate in my mind. The big question I have and the big concern I have is about the fact that this doesn't extend down into the youth of today in terms of in the UK we have the FA governing sport, and transgender men are allowed to play in young girls football, and it doesn't seem to be governed in any shape or form. And we're seeing all the controversy. I think this is very clear. I don't think it produces any bias or prejudice or aesthetic judgment about what people look like. It's a very simple test. My worry, Sue, and the question I'm going to levy at you is, how do they visit this down? It's one thing testing a professional athlete to ensure that they are in the right sex class that they wish to participate in.
Yeah.
But how do you do that when you've got 13, 14-year-old kids that are identifying? I know that the Equality Act of 2010 has now been determined in law and enshrined in governance that gender identity doesn't form the thinking about how people can be recognised. But how do you treat 13, 14-year-old people that suggest that they are female, want to play in female sports, but actually are male?
How do you, Sue? How do you, Becky?
Well, we work behind the scenes with lots of sports governing bodies, and we say to them the most important thing is to have clarity in their regulations and in their policy. So you make it clear that women's sports are for females only, but you also enforce that. And then part of that enforcing is how you have that sort of mechanism for reporting or indeed whistleblowing. Because part of the problem is, and we're hearing it from athletes, from coaches, from parents, anyone involved in sport, that there are issues, but they are terrified to say anything. Indeed. Because obviously they don't want to hurt the feelings of a particular person involved, but the responsibility shouldn't be onto these young girls to say, this is not fair. And we have heard so many heartbreaking stories of girls giving up sport and or being injured or being afraid to even speak up.
Yeah.
And this is not fair. The onus should be on the grown-ups in charge, on the leaders in sport, on the sports governing bodies. And also I would call out for Sport England and for the government to make it very clear that women's sports should be for females only.
Would you go with that, Becky?
You get maximum inclusion of women.
I mean, Becky, I introduced you. You led CNN's reporting on the issue at the Tokyo Olympics. You have great experience in this matter. Are we at where we're at, Becky, because the previous policies weren't working? Individual bodies making their own decisions about where this goes.
Look, the one thing I will agree on with all of you on this topic is that governing bodies don't have enough resources to create their own policy individually for every single sport. So I don't disagree that having one universal approach is the right approach for right now until we can have enough studies, enough research done. So many studies conducted when we talk about advantages in male chromosomes aren't actually conducted based on what hormones have actually impacted transgender athletes,
right,
and how those transitions have actually affected them. We don't have enough studies that compare trans women to women athletes because we don't have enough studies that actually are on women athletes to begin with. This is a big part of the problem. So the scientific research is still lacking, and governing bodies do have a hard time creating their own regulations.
Understood.
But with respect, we don't need this research, because the bottom line is it's not about how much the male advantage is over women. It's the fact that the female category is for women.
Right.
That is the bottom line.
Becky and Sue, time is against us. In a sentence each, if you can do this for me. Becky, where does this ruling leave transgender athletes in the world of sport?
I think it massively harms them, and I think that we are all humans and we all love sport, and I think if sport benefits one athlete's mental health, it benefits everybody's, and access to sport, especially at grassroots and recreational level, should be for everybody.
Sue, same question to you. Where does the ruling leave transgender athletes in the world of sport?
Well, it depends what sex they are, because if you listen to Becky's argument, she's advocating for those who are males and how that affects their access to female sport. Trans athletes who are female, for example, Ellis Lundholm in the recent Winter Olympics, or Hergy Bassian, who competed at Paris, they, because they're biologically female, competed within their sex. And that's what all transgender athletes should do, compete sport within their own sex.
Sue Wong, Becky Thompson, both of you, thank you so much for your time. We're live in talkSPORT this Tuesday morning. Thomas Tuchel has a whole lot fewer Arsenal players than he might have imagined in the coming days, because 10 Arsenal players have now withdrawn, not just from England duty, but from international duty. Eze, Gabriel, Hincapié, Madueke, Rice, Saka, Saliba, Timber, Trossard, Zubimendi. 4 Arsenal players had originally pulled out of international duty at the start of last week, a day after the Carabao Cup final, a match that they lost to Manchester City. They were Gabriel with a knee injury, Saliba, recurring pain in his left ankle, Trossard, a hip injury, and Eze, a calf problem. Now Zubimendi and Hincapié are the latest to withdraw. In fact, both Saka and Rice joined the England camp on Friday, but didn't feature in the draw with Uruguay on the same day, and now they've withdrawn. Sir Alex Ferguson used to remove players from international duty. In 2011, he described friendlies as a waste of time. Arsenal invincible Martin Keown is in our midst. Martin, are Arsenal being hit with a disastrous injury crisis, or is Arteta doing a Fergie?
Well, there's a lot of players that are injured going into this international. I hope that you're not making it as an inference that Arsenal are deliberately taking players out, because I think they're genuinely injured, Jim. So let's just go for each one. So Eze didn't make the cup final.
Do you think all of them are genuinely injured?
Ødegaard didn't make the cup final. They've been disappointed to have done so. I think there was another player in there as well. So 3 players missed the cup final. Zubimendi actually he played in the first game for Spain. He's got injured in that game. So I make that 4 of them. Gabriel, who's been pulled out of the squad, got injured early in the season playing Brazil and was out for 2 months.
Some of the biggest names in the game are coming your way this morning. Going to hear from Brighton Chief Executive Paul Barber later on this morning. At the top of the hour, you're going to hear from Crystal Palace manager Oliver Glasner, who said 1 or 2 things this season and stands by what he has said, and why shouldn't he? Simon, here's the thing. The cheapest tickets for Euro 2028 here in this country are set to cost below £30. Sounds good. UEFA has previously committed to ensuring 40% of tickets for the tournament are, quotes, in the most affordable categories. It's understood 15% of tickets will be available for 30 quid or less, and a further 25% of them will cost £60 or less. Sounds good. But it's in stark contrast to FIFA and this World Cup this summer, which sees dynamic pricing utilised for the first time. FIFA will also take a 30% cut, if you will, from tickets sold on its resale platform, which will have no cap. The cheapest ticket for the World Cup final will be more than £3,000, and the total cost to follow a team for the maximum 9 games at the finals will come to more than £5,000. You look at this and you think, are UEFA showing that FIFA, well, affordability here is a choice?
Depends what they're doing with the money, to depends what the model of these two entities are. The World Cup is by far more significant tournament than the Euros.
Yeah, but UEFA and FIFA are both not for profit.
Again, it depends where they're deploying it. FIFA's governance is over the worldwide game and distributing it across the world. UEFA's is over Europe. So you're distributing into one continent, whereas FIFA's responsibility is for the globe. I'm not suggesting their prices are right or wrong. I'm suggesting that people don't have to pay them. There's only a certain amount of tickets that people can get across the world in terms of how many are available. What are there, 6 million tickets for this particular tournament?
Probably,
right, out of a world that's got 8-9 billion people in it. So it's rarefied air for whoever goes to it. And like anything, it has a price point that people will either accept or they won't accept. And in this instance, it'll probably be sold out. It'll achieve the aims. The fundamental reasons why it was granted to the Americans was because of scale and the revenue that the Americans suggested they were going to generate. They told FIFA that to be awarded this competition, they would generate, I think it was $15 billion for FIFA, who would then use that to fertilise the game around the world. So their responsibilities, supposedly, are far greater than UEFA's.
But are they? I remember in Germany, in the Euros with you, there were huge crowds for the games.
Yeah, I'm not talking about crowds. I'm talking about...
But we're talking about supply and demand.
I'm talking about, yeah, but there's a certain amount of games, a certain amount of teams in the tournament, and also there's a certain scale. And so you've got, 500, 600 million people in Europe? 700 million people in Europe? That's the continent that the UEFA governs.
So because one is a global tournament, the World Cup, and the other, the Euros, you say that is the key difference here.
That's an argument that can be raised because FIFA's responsibility is to distribute that money across the globe.
But you could also say UEFA here equals affordability, FIFA equals rip-off.
Again, where's the money going? If we make the argument...
apparently back into the game.
Well, that's the argument then, isn't it? If that is indeed, and we have people that watch FIFA and have far more detailed knowledge of it, of either myself or Martin Samuel, who I know is making an observation about what he thinks it is. If the game is being funded around the globe and the development of all the different regions and opportunities via FIFA's remit and responsibility and mandate and manifesto, then their size of distribution is going to be, 10 times that of UEFA. UEFA don't distribute money into Australasia, don't distribute money into Africa, don't distribute money into the South Americas.
I get that, but do they need to use dynamic pricing for the first time?
Or do airlines need to do it? I mean, the bottom line is it's commercial reality. Let's see what happens in the next UEFA tournament, because UEFA do charge and do distribute money in a different way, and perhaps the scale of their tournament is managed in a different way. Look, I'm not as offended by these ticket prices as others are.
But you can afford it.
Well, it's not about whether I can afford it.
That's what it's about. Affordability.
It's not about. I'm not going to afford. I'm not going to go to World Cup games. We're going to go to America and cover it on a show. But yeah. I'm not really. I can watch the game on TV. That for me, the ultimate equation is this is a business. Its business responsibility is to fund football around the world, and that's what it does. Now, if we make the argument that there's a huge amount of wastage, there's a huge amount of vanity projects, there's a huge amount of salaries paid to the Infantinos of the world and all the council members, and this money is being dripped away, seeped in corruption and all manner of things, primarily for the benefit of the individuals that are sitting in positions of influence, like Infantino and his council. We make that argument. Right? We make that argument. Have we got those numbers? Do we know what they're getting paid? Do we know what their profligacy is, right? Or do we think that ultimately a large proportion of this money is distributed back into the grassroots of football? If it is distributed back in the grassroots of football, then let's not do that. Let's cut the tickets to the bone and distribute nothing to the grassroots of football, produce no incubation, have Arsene Wenger sitting in FIFA doing absolutely nothing, because the whole focus is that they wanted World Cups every 2 years, and the whole emphasis of this money is what good does it do? Does the good it does outweigh the individual outrage of what people have got to pay on ticket price level? If the answer is no, let's have that moral argument. If the answer is, well, yeah, I mean, it develops a new talent pool around the world which feeds domestic football. All these places around the world, in Ghana, in other parts of Africa, in other undeveloped regions, are throwing through young players now that are able to feed into our system, that feed our domestic football around the globe.
You could make that. You could make that argument. But the same man at the top of FIFA, Infantino, picked up £8 million in bonuses. Since 2022, 8 million quid.
A lot of money.
So we're talking about well done FIFA, because all this huge amount of money is going to go back into the game.
So let's cut.
Is Martin Samuel not right in the Times? What did anyone expect? Everything about the way the tickets were sold for the World Cup were priced, distributed, designed to fleece the fans.
I hear you. That's a lot of money for Infantino, and I don't like the fact he gets that kind of dough. Right? But it must be caveated based upon certain commercial activities and achievements, which will also be commercial endorsements, not just ticket prices. Let's cut his salary to $4 million and distribute that $4 million across the 6 million tickets, and they can all have 75p off.
I think you've got to look at it and you think, UEFA, affordability, FIFA, how the hell are you charging that?
But again, I hear you, but if the responsibilities of FIFA are greater than that of UEFA, and the distribution model creates different outcomes than what UEFA's responsibility.
Yeah.
We have to compare like with like.
But who are the consumers here, Simon? The consumers are the fans. The fans are buying tickets.
That's right.
Not so, I'm delighted to buy this ticket because the proceeds are going back into the game.
No,
they're buying it because they can afford to, or maybe they can't.
And they don't see it that
want
way.
value for money.
And I hear that. But what's value for money for one person is different for another. I don't think the ticket pricing is ideal. I don't think the revenues that FIFA have hijacked the World Cup. It didn't used to be the FIFA World Cup. It used to be the Jules Rimet Trophy. FIFA have hijacked it and made it their own.
Yeah.
They've turned it into a commercial vehicle like every other aspect of football. Football, in all of its glory, is driven by one commodity, money. How much players are getting paid, how much agents are getting paid, how much managers are getting paid, how much revenue clubs are developing, how big their fines are. People get fined on a weekly basis if they turn up late. Everything about football is seeded in money.
Yeah.
Why are you surprised that the opportunity to monetize it once every 4 years is taken by an entity?
You see, I'm just so sorry from your point of view. If England get to the final, I would have bought you a ticket quite happily, but not at these prices. It's 11 o'clock.
This is the fourth shortest reign of any Premier League manager. Just 5 days longer than Ange at Forest and 35 longer than 9-day Tudor Queen Lady Jane Grey. Oh no, you're taking a mickey now. And for a bit more context, it's thought that the average human would be able to walk from London to the heart of the Swiss Alps in such time as Tudor has been in charge. I don't want to know who worked that one out. We're going to take a call on it. Somebody that's called 03717 223344. It's Eli. Eli, very good morning to you. Thanks for taking the time to call us this morning. Is this the right thing that's happened, Eli?
Yeah, good morning. Talking about Tottenham Hotspur now, my club that I've supported over maybe 50 odd years.
Yeah.
What I'm saying to you is, picking the manager, I'm not sure which type of manager you want for the next 7 games, but I don't think it would hurt for a massive football reset, a Tottenham Hotspur reset, to actually go down.
Oh, that's a heck of a statement to make, Eli, because I don't think there's any guarantees you come back up, mate. Are you saying you could go down, spend a couple of years down there, rebuild and come back up? Is that what you're saying?
Ali, yeah, good morning to you, sir. I support Hearts, my Scottish team as well, so good luck to them on Saturday. But yeah, back to Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah, yes, Ali, I feel we might not, with the squad we've got. We've only got 3 players there at our club at the moment who actually want to be there and want to fight, and what it actually means to be a Tottenham Hotspur FC player.
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan Van range, supporting van owners to get the job done. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van Centre.
With your headlines at 4 minutes past 11, I'm Nick Ellaby. Good morning. With Roberto De Zerbi set to sign a 5-year deal at Spurs, former Crystal Palace chairman Simon Jordan says the Tottenham hierarchy are being held hostage.
by a manager that doesn't really stay anywhere for longer than 2 years at the best of times. Pay him, if this is indeed what's being reported and has accuracy attached to it, to be the third highest manager in the Premier League without actually having done that much as a manager.
Just 7 games to avoid relegation. Andy Townsend says there were genuine encouraging signs from the Spurs players in Tudor's last 2 games.
But too often they've been so disappointing, and most of them have looked like they've chucked it.
More on this at talkSPORT.com. Now, Newcastle say they have no plans to change manager Eddie Howe at the moment, but the chief exec says failure to get Champions League will mean having to sell big-name players. Mark Cucurella is the latest Chelsea player to hint at a move away, saying an offer to return to Barcelona would be hard to turn down. It's after Enzo Fernandez refusing to rule out a move to Real Madrid. Meanwhile, coming into Chelsea is former Team GB sprinter Adam Jamili. He spent 7 years in the academy himself and has already worked as a speed coach with the under-13s and 14s.
Massive improvements, all their testing and their numbers have improved massively, and I don't necessarily want them to start running like sprinters. I just want them to understand the mechanics of how to apply force, how to accelerate properly, and give them that extra advantage over their opponents on the pitch.
Tonight, England's players get one more tilt at a place in Tuchel's World Cup squad. The game with Japan is live on talkSPORT from 7 p.m. And congratulations, midfielder Erica Meg Parkinson's received her first England call-up. Serena Wigman's named 23 players for England's World Cup 2027 qualifiers against Spain and Iceland next month.
talkSPORT News.
The Prime Minister's given resident doctors 48 hours to call off what he calls reckless strikes, and a new inquiry into grooming gangs is looking at whether ethnicity, culture or religion affected how authorities responded. Emma has more in half an hour.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. Keep spring journeys safe. Visit your local centre or quickfit.com to book your tyres, MOTs and servicing so you can drive away happy every time.
Mostly cloudy, patchy rain, brightening up this afternoon a bit. A few showers around as well. Very mild, windy in the north.
Deontay Wilder and Derek Chisora go head-to-head at the O2 in London this weekend. We're going to talk about that and a whole bunch of issues in the world of boxing. We're going to do that with Ben Shalom, top boxing promoter, later on in the show. Good morning, it's Jim and Simon live on talkSPORT at 7 minutes past 11 o'clock this Tuesday morning, March the 31st. So last night, in posh Mayfair in London, too posh for me, I'll tell you, I popped along to a fundraising event for Football Beyond Borders. Now, this is a charity that does great work. It uses the power of football to support young people to stay in school in preparation for adult life. Over 600,000 teenagers in England say they don't currently have an adult that they can turn to when they are struggling. Now, present at the event last night, Crystal Palace manager Oliver Glasner, who spoke about a whole range of issues in the chat I had with him during the course of the evening. But Oliver began by telling me why this charity, Football Beyond Borders, is so important to him.
It's always the best for me to support and to help children, young adults, to guide them, and I also visited a school in South London and had a session and the Q&A with the young kids, and it's just great to share my experience with them, and maybe they have one or two quotes that will stay for and help them in their life.
Very interesting tonight, the reaction you're getting, football stories. and you're alongside Fabian Hürzeler. What would you say about him? Here's a young man who's made huge strides in the Premier League with Brighton.
Yes, Fabian is very young. He could still be a player, and he's younger than some of his players, and he's doing an amazing job there. And I met him, and we're talking, let's say 3-4 times a year. And he's a great manager, but he's also a great person. And I think this is what everybody can see. He's very authentic and doing a brilliant job for Brighton. And so I hope for him that he has a great future, and I'm pretty sure that he will have a great future here in the Premier League and with Brighton.
Oliver, after all the optimism of the FA Cup win, how would you sum up this season for you and Palace so far?
The season feels very bumpy, honestly, but when I just look at the facts, and I was just talking, I think today or yesterday to one of my assistants, I think it's the second or third best season in Crystal Palace history at this stage of the season in the Premier League. We are in the quarterfinal of a European competition. We played the quarterfinal in the Carabao Cup. So with all the circumstances, selling Ebrejese, selling Mark Gay, having a lot of noise in and around the club, it feels it's a massive achievement, and it's a great achievement from this group of players, because and I'm in football for many years, and it can also go very quick into the wrong direction. And we are in a good position in the Premier League. We are in a good position in the Conference League. Of course, it depends on how the season ends, but right now it feels it's a great season.
When you say bumpy, it's been a bit bumpy. Do you have any regrets about how you've handled the media? At one stage, you said you felt abandoned.
I don't have regrets, honestly. So I'm very honest. I never tell somebody what he wants to hear. I always tell him what is my opinion, what is my feeling. That doesn't mean that it's always right. Yeah, but I think everybody deserves to hear how I am feeling, how I see some things that happened or that's going on, and not everybody has to be delighted with my opinion, to be honest.
How did that go down with the ownership?
No, honestly, it was. I think they were not really pleased, but we talked about it, and they could understand me and everybody who knows me, and I think the players, especially for me, is always the most important part are the players, and they know me, and they just didn't know that I'm honest, and they could deal with it, and in this special moment we felt it. I felt it, the players felt it the day before a game with some injury concerns, and for me I had to get rid of it. I know that this caused a lot of noise, but on the other side I think that it's not just in football, it's in our society, especially that and it's also in politics, that too often people who are in charge are telling what somebody wants to hear and not what's their opinion is. And I think that would be that's very important, that we're telling the truth, that we're telling our opinion, and that we defend our opinion. Because that's democracy. Discussing, saying that's your opinion, that's my opinion. We're discussing at the end, but there is one main goal. We all want the best for Crystal Palace. It's the players, it's the manager, it's the staff, and it's the chairman. And then it's important that not everybody says, it's good what you're doing, it's good, because I think you need discussions, that you bring the club forward. And I think when we look back at the 2 years where I'm in charge, we brought the club forward.
So you have no regrets about what you said. Do you worry in any way that some people have suggested that your conduct, you were too honest? It might put off prospective boardrooms. Other owners might look at Oliver Glasner and think, well, I remember what he said when he was at Palace.
I think, when I think about your question, have you been too honest? Can you be too honest? That's my question. So I always like if somebody's honest to me, and I know it's not so many can't deal with criticism, but criticism is a way of supporting, and it's also building resilience, not always saying, it's good what you're doing, it's good what you do, it's good what you do. If you do something that's not good, it's very important that somebody tells you that was not the right thing. So even when you grow up, you can't, let's say, steal something, and somebody says, it's nice what you have done. And somebody has to say, hey, it's the wrong way. And that's, I think, nobody can be too honest.
you know, you're looking forward to a strong finish to this season with Crystal Palace. Thereafter, do you want to stay in the Premier League?
To be honest, I don't know right now. So for me, it's really the focus on having a great end to the season. We still have a lot to achieve. We're not so far away from the international places in the Premier League. We're in the quarterfinal of a European competition. So we're entering the crunch time, and we have to having the players fit. And so I'm really 100% focused on the end of the season. And then what I learned in football, I'm now in football for more than 30 years. You can't plan anything. You know, things happen or don't happen. So I'm really open, and let's see what the summer brings. But again, for me, the most important thing is now having a great end to the season, having a great end to the more than 2 years with Crystal Palace, and then celebrating all together.
That was Oliver Glasner speaking last night, Simon, at the Football Beyond Borders charity event. He was speaking to me outside, you could hear the traffic outside Mount Street in Mayfair. Simon, we always like people who say what they mean and mean what they say. He is one. He made such an impression on me last night, Oliver Glasner. And he does not regret, as you heard, and you and I were having an exchange during that, he does not regret saying that when Gehi and Eze were sold, and he had to field his team with the players who were available to him, well, hang on, I did feel a bit abandoned.
Yeah, he's going to die.
But you like this guy. You're impressed by his frankness. I'm
impressed by his performance. Openness. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting phenomenon with managers who think they have the monopoly on speaking their minds. I wonder how often they would feel relaxed if the owners speak their minds as frankly as he thinks he's entitled to do. Because he thinks that people should only ever tell the truth and only ever speak their minds. And
well, that's right, isn't it?
And there's something to be said for that. But if an owner did that and started to speak about his performance, he'd have absolute kittens about it. So there's a balance, right? I like him. I remember speaking to Dougie Freedman about him, and Dougie Freedman really likes him and thinks he's a great manager and thinks that he will do great things. And he has done great things with Crystal Palace. Arguably, he's been the most successful manager that Crystal Palace have ever had because he's won an FA Cup.
Yeah.
You know, the team of the 80s that Venables produced was a very good a very good side that fell away at the end and didn't become a team of the 80s.
Is Oliver right to have no regrets?
Well, you probably only regret the things you don't do. If he suffers consequences from those words, he may regret it. He doesn't regret it right now because he doesn't think it affects his stock. If it does affect his stock, then he might have regrets about it. Was he right to say the things he said? Was he right to feel the things that he felt? Yeah, I think he probably was. I spoke about him at the beginning of the season, saying I think it's very unlikely this fellow will stay. He's not been given the support that I think his performances entitle him to as a progressive, ambitious manager. But Crystal Palace are not a progressive, ambitious football club economically. They're ambitious to a point, but they're not ambitious to push the envelope beyond where their cash flow allows them to go. They won't go to their billionaire shareholders and say, you've got to pony up more money. It's very easy for Oliver to turn around and say what he wouldn't do, never being in the situation that Parish and the board are in when Gehi's going on a free contract at the end of the season. What would he have done in that situation then? The player probably wants to go. The deal's on the table. You're going to get nothing from him in 4 months' time.
Yeah.
How would Oliver, walk in their shoes, how would you have handled it then, my old son? And unless you can understand that yourself, then you're probably best served playing a little bit of the right side of the back. Now, yes, of course, people will love what they consider to be honesty. I don't know if it's honesty or it's his version of events. And he's prepared to voice them to promote himself in the best possible way. Yeah. He's insulating himself. The Palace fans have gotten a bit fed up with him because they got unhappy with the outcomes of the team on the field for a period of time. They're in a competition where they should be doing. They've struggled.
They should win this thing.
They've struggled.
Yeah,
they've struggled in it. But the bottom line is, do I think he's a good manager? I think he's an outstanding manager. Could he manage a top six side? I don't know. But I think he's been brilliant for Crystal Palace. I think it's sad that it's gone the way it has. I don't think he's been supported economically as well as he could have been. But I also think that his behaviour and his outbursts weren't great. And you can hide behind the veneer of honesty, or you can say, well, it weren't great, Oliver. Perhaps you should have kept your trap shut, finished your job and left.
Okay. Oliver Glasner, nonetheless, speaking to me openly and frankly at the Football Beyond Borders evening last night in Mayfair. Do you trust the Spurs ownership to get this next appointment right?
Do I trust the Spurs ownership? I don't know. Do I rate the Spurs ownership?
Well, you said you're not sure that you know what they're doing.
It's not for me to trust them because I don't care about their judgment. But do I rate their judgment? Well, not at this moment in time, because the body of work that they've produced is poor. They weren't responsible for the appointment of Thomas Frank, so there's an irrelevance to that question because Daniel Levy made that appointment. The fact that he fired him, the fact that was an inevitability and forecast by me 2 or 3 months earlier isn't a surprise. The fact that they've in my mind, they've got 2 people that are number 2s in business, running the business and making decisions, of outside influences that sit on their board that don't have any football knowledge, in my view, making decisions, has brought out outcomes that would make anybody go, well, I don't really rate their thinking. As far as De Zerbi is concerned, he's a decent manager. He comes with his own baggage like most of them do. He did a decent job at Brighton. He was an ungrateful little wretch when he departed because he decided to have a broadside at the owner of the football club that spent enormous amounts of time giving him an opportunity and backing him. Just because you lost a game in Europe doesn't really entitle you to have a broadside at your ownership model. But that's what he does, and that's what you get. Now, for him, taking Tottenham Hotspur, I think there's all upside for him. This is a huge football club. Irrespective if it gets relegated or not, my balance of probabilities it will bounce back again. And it'll be priced into people's thinking. If he takes the Tottenham job because of the size of that football club and the scale of it, then there will always be a dispensation if they were to be relegated because it wouldn't be on his watch.
I've heard reaction to this in other quarters, Simon. I want to get your reaction to it because I think your reaction will stand out from the rest. In a bizarre viral clip over the weekend in the world of rugby, Leicester Tigers boss Jeff Parling had, how would you describe it, an X-rated exchange with TNT Sport presenters ahead of their match with Gloucester. Now, what happened was this. The presenter Craig Doyle invited former footballer Liam McDevitt, now part of the TNT team, to attempt a conversion at the posts near where the Leicester players were warming up before the game. Doyle joked it was part of an initiation to McDevitt being a new member of their team, if you like. So it was all a bit of fun, really. The Leicester coach Parling, in his own explicit way, told them to get off the pitch and then shoved the presenter Craig Doyle. This was the moment.
You're going to kick this ball. Yeah, it's going to be a debut-defining moment, I think. We'll for a footballer, what's he got? Let's have a look. Brave man. Get there. It's good effort. It's good effort. These chaps are giving me this. Would you sign him, Jeff? Would you sign him? Oh, sorry, mate. Okay. Jeff, not happy about that. Okay, apologies for language.
Good lad, well done. So there was Jeff Parling coming over and saying, get off the pitch.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Quite bluntly. Well, Parling confirmed he received an apology from TNT, the broadcaster, for the incident.
Yeah.
Because it hadn't been cleared with Leicester, would you believe, beforehand. And it might have been risky in terms of an injury to the player. What, the ball flying through the air, Jeff, might have injured one of your players.
I mean, I'm all for Martin Keown getting hit in the ball in the side of the head of a TNT broadcast. If it's an athlete getting hit, so he boots that ball and someone hits him in the face. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Off it. This was Parling anyway. This was his ticket. after the game.
Producer from TNT has just come and apologised to me. They had something set up that wasn't passed with anybody without our knowledge, and I'm very wary. I need to protect my players, and certainly balls flying towards our players that could go anywhere where there's an injury risk, then no, I'm obviously not going to be happy.
Oh yeah, the ball flying through the air, they might hurt one of the 6'10" rugby players.
Might hit him in the face. I mean,
Are you kidding?
Was he a shrunken down version of Jurgen Klopp?
TNT Sports, Simon. I would have thought you would have gone in this direction. Pay £40 million a year, which includes on-field access before the game. It includes on-field access before the game.
Which they've got on-field access. It doesn't include booting balls into the environment where the athletes are.
Oh, come on.
What next? You're going to have a reporter go in and start doing some sparring with a fighter before he goes out and boxes somebody. The broadcasters have a right to pay and get what they pay for. And there's nothing wrong with a bit of courtesy. If they'd have floated and said to them, we're going to boot balls in the area where the players are warming up before the game, they probably would have been told no.
Of course they would have been.
There was a barrier to entry. You know my view on this. Despite the fact that I think the game is funded by broadcast and rugby needs more money than most sports, it doesn't give you guys a God-given right, or us, let's just say for the purpose of this conversation, us a God-given right to do precisely what we want. What next? What are we going to do next then?
No, but this
Go in the toilet and when someone's having a poo and sit outside and have an interview. What is next?
Simon.
Silly.
They pay big money to cover the games.
To cover
what do the broadcasters do? Provide entertainment. Craig Doyle quite rightly said to McDevitt, "There's a post. Have a ping at that."
Yeah, but
and the fella took a kick and just missed it. But it's a bit different. And then you get Parling coming over. Get off the pitch.
Yeah, get away.
You weren't allowed to do that.
He didn't say
and shoving them off the.
No, he didn't say get off the pitch. He said don't boot balls at my players, or in the area that my players are. Nobody walked out. So the TNT presenters weren't sitting there minding their own business, and he came along and said, get off the pitch. He kicked a rugby ball into the space where the athletes were warming up. Now, to me, whilst it's not a capital offence, I don't make him wrong for going, what are you doing?
Why?
What are you doing? Because why would you do that? How would you like me to come over in the middle of your broadcast and decide to stick my 2 penny thing when I wasn't asked? Well, actually, you pay for this, so I'll give it to you, but I didn't ask for it.
Well, why then?
Well, I'll give it to you because I'm an athlete, I can.
Why did Leicester Tigers then feel that they had to take to social media to apologise? Jeff Parling, I would like to apologise for the incident pre-game yesterday. It's important we stay a family-focused game, and it wasn't appropriate for young fans to see that.
I don't know, maybe a bunch of fannies and everyone wants to apologise for something. I don't know, but the best thing to do is try and diffuse things.
Yeah.
They've apologised to him. He's apologised for his extreme reaction.
What a nonsense.
I don't think that the broadcast... So
why did Parling not go over to Dawn and just have a laugh? I'm not going to sign McDevitt, but have a laugh about it.
Should I tell you why? Because maybe he's in game mode. Maybe these guys are in a very competitive zone.
Yeah.
And they don't need some jug-eared presenter booting balls over where they're warming up. And he's already in a mode of being competitive and combative. And he goes, "What's that about? Yeah. What are you doing?
What are you doing? We're in the zone." Honestly.
Well, I think it's extreme to have pushed him, but I don't make him wrong. And I think the broadcaster should have the courtesy to say, we're going to have a little bit of a joke. We're going to boot a ball near you. Now, you can't just do what you want.
You've never had the spontaneity.
But
Craig Doyle was right.
But that's not your
gift.
gift.
McDevitt, let's finish the interview in a funny way. Have a tilt at the post.
I will think of, I can't think of it off the top of my head now, I will think of a way where spontaneity for the broadcaster in terms of doing something, when they're in the middle of doing whatever it is they do, espousing the world of their knowledge, right? I'll come up with doing something. I'll boot a ball into their direction, right? Why'd you do that? Oh, because I felt like it. I boot a ball. While you're doing a live broadcast, I'll start booting balls into you and see how you feel about it.
What I will say...
The presenter would go, what are you doing?
What I will say, at times when pundits get involved with players warming up, it can end up funny. This was Keown at the Emirates.
It's a serious problem, Martin. It's tackling something that is going to start to go out of the game.
Well,
now.
we hope not.
Oh! Yeah. Well, that was. I think that was one of the Leeds players. Yeah. And are you all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just about. Yeah.
No, the players on the pitch didn't tell anyone they were going to do that, and Martin Keown caught for one on the side of his nut.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, there's nothing wrong with that in my view.
No, that was
entirely deserved. Right? Yeah. If I had a football in, I'd boot it at Keown all morning.
Yeah.
But no, that's not nice either.
Yeah.
But someone might have shanked it. That might have been simply someone miss it a ball. I don't know. But the fact is, that's not nice either.
I think someone looked at Martin and thought, I can nail him from here.
Cheeky sod. Yeah, cheeky sod.
Here's the thing, Craig Doyle, if you're listening this morning, I thought it was funny with you and Liam McDevitt. Well done. As for the fella that came over, Jeff Parling, for God's sake, get a sense of humour, Jeff. But you did apologise afterwards. 11:30. Friday night, England drew 1-1 with Uruguay. Ben White making his first appearance for his country since he walked out at the Qatar 2022 World Cup camp due to a reported falling out with the then assistant Steve Holland. So, Ben White on Friday night, Martin, a bit of an eventful night for Ben, to put it mildly. He gets booed when he put the ball in the back of the net, and he gave away the penalty in the 94th minute to see the game finish 1-1. And he was booed as he came off. Jonathan Norcroft in the Times, it's an angry world and modern football crowds exhibit it. But booing a player after scoring for your country is still difficult to comprehend. Supporters do need to hear Ben White express some sort of regret. White is shy, but it's not too much to ask him to talk. We didn't hear from Ben, but we heard from Tuchel on the booze.
Disappointed if our players are booed. I understood that it happened before to players and they went through it and took it on the chin. Still, I don't like it. Still, I'm disappointed. I will always protect my players. He did so well in training and he almost scored for us, so it could have been a perfect comeback. But it was mixed reactions. It was not only boos, some cheered, so let's hope we put this behind us.
Martin, Jonathan Norcroft in the Times were saying that maybe if he's going to continue his international career, Ben White, he should explain himself what happened. Maybe speak out about the events from those years ago. Supporters do need to hear him express some sort of regret.
Is Roberto De Zerbi the right man to get Spurs through a relegation scrap? European football expert Dougie Critchley's told us De Zerbi was great at developing players like Alexis McAllister and João Pedro to get Brighton up to 6th.
He does have an amazing reputation for improving clubs, but over the short term, it's an entirely new style of play that might take a little while for the Spurs players to adapt to.
Tottenham have 7 games to avoid the drop, but Andy Townsend doesn't think the players have the stomach.
Most of them have looked like they've chucked it. Most of them have. Because, look, the truth of the matter is, if you're a player nowadays of some repute and they've got plenty of players in that bracket,
Well, they'll be away.
the easiest way for them to get out of the club is if they get
100%.
relegated.
More on this at talkSPORT.com as it unfolds. Now, daylight offsides are being trialled in the Canadian Premier League from this Saturday. It's an attempt at restoring some advantage to the attackers. Critics say it'll mean defences dropping deeper. Either way, it won't satisfy Ali McCoist's offside concerns.
I mean, I've got to say, some of the lines, I mean, see up in Scotland, the lines look as though they're getting drawn by a 2-year-old kid with a crayon. Do you know what I mean?
Ghana have sacked their manager Otto Addo just 72 days out from the World Cup. They're in England's group, of course. Elliot Anderson's a dead cert to be there, barring injury. But does he prefer playing 6 or 8?
Oh, it's a tough one. Yeah, as I said, I really like both positions. I think they bring out different sides of my game. As an 8, I probably need more goals and assists.
Anderson's giving Lee Carsley the credit for his England place as number 6. It was Carsley who first got Anderson to drop deeper in training at St George's Park. England versus Japan is live on talkSPORT from 7 p.m. tonight.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. We're ready for the action. Are you? Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus. GambleAware.org.
Sean Martin, who secretly is our favourite at BetMGM, joins us live as we look at some of the sporting
It's a low
events.
bar, by the way.
It's a low bar. Some of the ongoing stories and the odds round and about them. That was Sean grunting in the background in acknowledgement of our comments. Sean, good morning. You are our favourite, mate. You know that.
Interesting use of the word "our," Jim, is all I'll say. But morning, lads.
Good morning to you. So let's get to it.
Yep.
Simon and I spoke about it earlier on. Roberto De Zerbi to Tottenham. What's the latest?
Yeah, well, Spurs obviously opted to move away from Igor Tudor after 7 games. Been there, done that this season, Jim, to be fair.
Yes.
If you see it's just not working and not likely to work, I think it's fair enough. Obviously, Celtic still paying the price for their particular managerial mistake, but whether Spurs do remains to be seen. Not confirmed yet, obviously, but Roberto De Zerbi looks close to taking over. He was sitting at around 33 to 100 in the market this morning, so pretty comfortably odds on to take over. I think the next best was Sean Dyche at 2 to 1. And if you look at the market to be Spurs manager on the first day of next season, again, Roberto De Zerbi, clearly the favourite there. It's not had a massive impact yet on relegation odds, is what I would say. Spurs were 8 to 5 to go down the middle of last week, now 27 to 20, still behind West Ham, who are evens favourites to go down to the Championship alongside Burnley and Wolves. A handful of us, the Brains Trust, we've called it before, had a wee debate earlier over which of Spurs, Forest, Leeds and West Ham would eventually sit 18th come the end of the season. We fed, I think it was Dan's idea actually, we fed results into a wee predictor programme thing, and let me tell you, virtually no consensus in the Brains Trust. A couple of us said West Ham on goal difference by a point, things like that. There was a Spurs one in there, Forest as well, someone ended up saying that they think they'll go down. So I suppose, lads, if I were to give you £20, and I'm not giving you £20 of course, Scottish.
Say that again. If you were to give us 20 quid, yes. 20
quid. I'm not Scottish, of course. It's hypothetical. Which team are each of you placing that £20 on to go down?
Well, we've spoken about this, haven't we? You still, with apologies to all West Ham fans, you still leaning towards West Ham to drop?
I am, but I'm curious to see. You guys are still making West Ham the favourites, albeit the margins are closing. Mm. But you and bookies very rarely get it wrong. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in business. So why are you driving that thought process? I know you've had in your brain trust this sort of mixed messages about who does what, when and why. But you as bookies are still detailing that West Ham are going to be the third to go down with Burnley and Wolves. Given West Ham's form in recent time and the complete absence of form from Tottenham, why are you as bookies still alighting upon that thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's evens, as I say, for West Ham. It actually goes all the way back to 11 to 2 for Forest, which I think is actually quite a big jump that we were talking about earlier. Forest, arguably, to me, looking at the remaining fixtures, have the hardest run-in. And you're right, West Ham have been in better form than Spurs. I think there's all sorts of things that go into making the odds here. The fixtures that Spurs have remaining, they play Wolves away and Leeds at home.
Leeds, yeah, absolutely. And Everton at home as well, yeah.
Everton home last game of the season, yeah. West Ham are already in 18th, and that does count for a lot when these things are made up.
Yeah. I think I think West Ham.
So where would you put your 20 quid then?
Yeah, exactly. What do you think?
Well,
Sean?
My predictor ended up with West Ham.
Right.
But I really do think it could go all sorts of ways. And I do think, again, not to talk down Forest or anything, but looking at the remaining fixtures that they've got, they only play Burnley of the other kind of relegation threatened sides, and the rest all play at least 2. But I think Leeds have actually got 4. So you're talking fixtures as well could make a big difference to those odds as we go along.
I often think that if you're playing sides that are better than you, it's a better outcome than playing sides that are scrapping and desperate and fighting tooth and nail. If you're fighting against if you're playing against more expansive sides that think they can beat you, it gives you an opportunity. If you're playing against sides that are just trying to stop you from winning them and ultimately get an outcome themselves with so much further behind it, actually it's easier to play against the better sides.
Do you think Spurs are safe if they get De Zerbi?
Well, I think it is better than having nobody.
Well, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, they could go with an interim. They could go in the building, and they could go with some of the thought processes that I was hearing being mooted around about 6 weeks ago was Ryan Mason and Ledley King forming an unholy relationship and leading the team forward. I think it's better than that, but I don't know. I don't know what he's like in a relegation battle. I don't know how quickly he can pack his ideas. He is not going to develop a style of play. It took Nuno about 4 or 5 weeks to get Wolves going. He hasn't got 4 or 5 weeks. He's got about 4 or 5 days. So all he's going to be able to do is get these kids' minds right and to be able to overcome some adversity, because that's all Spurs are failing at. Is the moment Spurs go behind in the game, they fall apart, because they were in control of the game, I thought, at times against Forest. Never saw 3-0 coming.
What about tonight then? England against Japan, conquerors of Scotland, and Scotland against the Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. Where are we going with that, Sean?
Yeah, England take on Japan, who obviously, as you say, beat Scotland at Hampden at the weekend, Jim. Some boos at the end of that one as well. England 1-2 favourites, meaning you can get Japan at just under 5-1 to do the double on these shores, 3-1 the draw. I was speaking to a few of the English lads in the office this morning. Obviously, last game on English soil before the World Cup, a few players gone from camp, but some big hitters potentially expected to play. And they were hoping that maybe they'll get a sniff of what Thomas Tuchel's thinking for a couple of positions. How, John Stones fares, Lewis Hall or Nico O'Reilly at left back, maybe where Morgan Rogers features, that type of thing. Up north from that game, but notably not across the border, Scotland play the Ivory Coast at Everton's Hill Dickinson Stadium. First time Scotland have ever faced Ivory Coast at senior level, I'm reliably informed. Steve Clarke and co 11-5 underdogs, Jim, to turn the weekend boos into cheers. You can get 5-2 the draw in Ivory Coast, who beat South Korea 4-0 in Milton Keynes at the weekend. 5-4 favourites to beat Scotland tonight, guys.
Okay. What are you mouthing to me?
I'm just saying, why is Scotland playing an international game in England?
Well,
I think technically it's Ivory Coast's home game.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, is it?
Is the way that it plays.
I think that's the way
it's just based in England, and
I think you're absolutely spot on. I think that's how it works out. You're right. It's Côte d'Ivoire against Scotland tonight, but that is at the Hill Dickinson. I'm not sure. We'll check if Zaha was he playing at the weekend. They were playing. There was a whole raft of games, wasn't there, over the weekend? At the end of the day, when it comes to a friendly, Scotland, I'm reliably informed by my two English producers that Scotland haven't won a friendly since 2016. Oh, that was at Hampden, Sean. That was at Hampden. So tonight, you never know.
I've got to say, I think it's at Hampden, but I wasn't going to mention that. But maybe that led to some of the boos.
Yeah, well, you never know. Lining up over the weekend for them, the Côte d'Ivoire. Jean-Michel Seri, he played for Fulham, didn't he? Guessand, who now plays for Palace. Ndika, the defender who plays for Roma. I'm looking about, but I'm not seeing Wilfried Zaha. So, no, there was no Zaha at the weekend, so there'll be no Zaha tonight. And what about the World Cup qualifiers? You looking at that for us, Sean?
Yeah, finally we will learn that the final 4 European teams at the World Cup later tonight. Italy 13-25 favourites over in Bosnia. I said last week to you guys, I don't necessarily trust Italy to get the job done in these situations these days, and this does seem exactly the kind of scenario in which they would lose, and have done actually the last 2 attempts at qualifying, albeit it is a big 6-1 for Bosnia to win in 90 minutes, so I suppose there are no excuses there. Elsewhere, Denmark 10-11 favourites to beat Czech Republic in Prague. Kosovo host Turkey as 16-5 underdogs. Only joined FIFA a decade ago. Now 1 game away from a World Cup.
Incredible story, that. Amazing.
And Sweden odds on at home to beat Poland. Although you just never know. Robert Lewandowski and co. It's 13-5. So just over 2.5-1, guys, for all 4 favourites to qualify. So it doesn't need to be in regular time. Just need to qualify. But as I say, I'm not sure I'd be touching the straight win markets for a couple of these games tonight. Potentially maybe bet builders with goals and player markets, the place to go tonight, lads.
Okay, I know Edin Dzeko plays for Bosnia, but I think Italy, you'd rather have them in America, would you not? The Italian colour.
Yeah, I think because
Boston.
of what I described last week, which was the nature of the makeup of the population of certain parts of America that are very Italian in certain areas, Portuguese in other, Hispanic in others. You want to see, and always you want to see nations, with due respect to Bosnia, like Italy, that are such bedrocks of football, that have such history and heritage, that will always bring out the intrigue and interest when the Italians are part of things. So I would prefer to see the Italians.
I think they'll do it, even though they're up against Bosnia. And it's not just Bosnia, it's Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sean, thank you so much. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus, be gamble aware. Detorg.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18 plus, gambleaware.org.
Is Itoma the sort of fighter, Dave, that the likes of Fury, the likes of AJ, you know, that they're in the mid-30s now, they're trying to avoid, and maybe more like a Fabio Wardley and Dubois would be one of the fights that you'll have next?
Yeah, Joshua and Fury won't go near him. He's too young, too fresh, too fast. You know, their best days have gone. So, Itama, realistically, he's looking at Dubois, Wardley winner. I don't think the Wardley winner. I think if Wardley wins, I don't think he'll box him because they're in the same gym. Dubois may, but Caballel, you know, Itama's gonna have to fight one of them guys. He's not gonna get one of the old guard that's on the way out. He's gonna have to box one of the real, you know, main men, which is Caballel. So it's interesting, and then he's gonna be around for another 15 years, hopefully. You know, so there's going to be people we're not even heard of yet that are going to come and have a go at him.
Is that the danger with heavyweights like him, to be so strong and powerful but quick as well?
Yeah, it's the speed. All heavyweights can punch. For me personally, I've never been put over in a fight, never been down and out. That's because I can see him coming. The danger with the time is you don't really see him coming. He's that fast. You know, he throws a lovely right hook off the back of a left hand to the body, and no one sees it coming. That's what Franklin does well. Franklin doesn't get hit properly. That's why he's never been over. All his great chin talk for me is nonsense. There's no great chins. Anyone gets hit properly, you go over.
The talkSPORT 20k giveaway.
Yep, it's competition time. It's a big one. talkSPORT are giving away one lucky listener the chance to bag 20 grand tax-free. Here's how you can do it. Text WIN to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. The number to call is 0343 418 7260. The lines close April the 9th at 4 o'clock. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. Always a good idea. 18 plus, UK residents only. A network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com. Your chance to win 20 grand tax-free. Text WIN to 83338 right now. Up in posh Mayfair last night, Simon, in actual fact, there was a car in the street.
Pagani.
What is it?
A Pagani Utopia.
A Pagani Utopia. Somebody was trying to tell me it's worth £3 million.
About 3.5, yep.
Parked in the streets. Far too smart an area for me. But inside this very plush restaurant where the good and the great of Football Beyond Borders were meeting. It's an education charity that uses the power of football to engage and support young people. And the Brighton Chief Executive, Paul Barber, is chairman of the Football Beyond Borders trustees and does a hell of a lot of good work in that area. But of course, Paul Barber well knows the man who's it has been widely speculated who's going to move in and take over at Tottenham on whatever length of contract basis remains to be seen. But that man is Roberto De Zerbi. So I spoke to Paul and I said to him, here's the thing. Judging where Tottenham are in the Premier League at the moment, would you back De Zerbi, who once worked for you, to do some decent work in what would be a relegation battle?
Roberto's a fabulous football coach, and I'm sure wherever he goes, he'll do very well.
I mean, you had your differences at the end, didn't you?
Not differences as such. I mean, Roberto did 2 fabulous years with us. We got into Europe for the first time in the club's history. We worked really hard to entertain the fans, which we did. Roberto is a fantastic character to work with, and obviously we wished him well when he went to Marseille, and let's see what the future brings for him, maybe back in England.
Paul, while I have you, one other story of late, Chelsea's sanction, a £10.75 million fine. Was it too lenient?
Again, that's really one for the Premier League. I don't know the ins and outs of exactly what happened or when or how. All I do know is that the current owners came forward, gave as much help to the Premier League as they could, and ultimately it's for the Premier League to decide on sanctions, not other clubs.
I understand that, but you're a well-respected figure in the game. Might it not send the wrong kind of message to others who might be looking to indulge in something similar?
Well, I think every time there are transgressions of rules, regulations, leagues and federations work to tighten them. And I would hope that all of those rules have been tightened. People will learn lessons. We all want to compete on a level playing field, and we all want to do the best for the game, and we've all got a responsibility to do that as well.
Some would say that Chelsea's achievements and Chelsea's name should have an asterisk beside it. Is that going too far?
We weren't in the Premier League at the time, so it's very hard for me to sort of judge what others may think about that. I know that the Premier League will always do the best they can to come to the right outcomes, and it's for others to judge, I think, whether they have or they haven't.
What kind of end to the season do you hope Fabian and the boys can put in for you?
He's done a really good job. I mean, 8th in his first season. This season has obviously been difficult. We've had our moments when it's been hard to get the points that we think the performances deserved. But once again, Fabian's worked through that. The players have worked through that. The staff have worked through that. We've won 4 of our last 5 games. We've got 7 more to go. We're looking forward to a strong end to the season and finishing as high as we possibly can.
That was Paul Barber speaking to me last night at the Football Beyond Borders fundraising dinner. Very diplomatic, shall we say, when it came to matters Chelsea.
They all will be. Because I've told you, they'll speak privately to some extent, and they'll all saber rattle privately, and then when it comes to standing up and saying something, as in my experience of previous incarnations, everyone sits down when you stand up and go, and by the way, and you turn around and all the people that are rabble-rousing behind you outside the room were sitting down looking the other way. Everybody knows that what Chelsea did is fundamentally wrong. It brings the whole principle of the Premier League into disrepute. It creates a real issue around the integrity of the Premier League. It's a cheating mechanism. But clubs like Brighton and Brentford and Palace will look at it and go, the big 6 clubs, they are the ones that bring in the commercial revenues around the world. Whilst we don't like what they've done, and maybe we need to tighten up the rules and campaign for a different set of rules that really do detail how these things should be stopped and the consequences of them there afterwards, they're not going to rock it too much. I mean, Everton will go on a fishing expedition, like we were talking about the other day, about the outrage that they feel about the sanctions that they got put upon them, and also the consequences of other football clubs suggesting that by Chelsea cheating and taking away things from them, they might have finished a place lower in the league. And where does it end? Yeah. But the bottom line is, should we clean house? To some extent, yeah. But if you clean house, what are the consequences of it? Which is the lesser of 2 evils? Making sure it doesn't happen again, or dismantling what has happened, and then dismantling the principle behind the Premier League and doing it in the glare of the world.
Would you be, say you were still at Palace and
wouldn't have affected me.
You were in and about the rest of the Premier League and the Premier League owners. Would you not shout up more, knowing you as I know you, about the Chelsea situation?
Well, yes and no, because I don't tend to go out on a limb to be offended on behalf of other people. I didn't try and buy Eden Hazard. So the fact that someone was given a backhander, or whichever way Chelsea did it, to get Eden Hazard rather than Man United, didn't affect me. So I could be offended on behalf of Man United, and I can confect my outrage into an outcome of we need to bring the whole house down. We need to bring the whole temple down on everyone's heads. It's not clean. It's corrupt. We need to annul the leagues, and then once we've got the situation with Chelsea sorted out, we need to do the same to Man City. So we need to wipe out, if we get an opportunity, maybe 10 of the last 15 titles. What would that achieve for the Premier League? I know the fans would want it, and I understand why they would want it, and I understand the fans of other teams were saying this is not what's right and proper. But then what you do with the Premier League is you could dismantle the Premier League and all it stands for. And then people say, well, what does it stand for? Cheating. Look, I mean...
You wouldn't have saber rattled.
It's about the consequence to the action. No, I'm not sure I would have done. I would have said to Richard Masters, be better at your job. Be better at your job. Why have we got ourselves into a situation where Everton and Nottingham Forest, I mean, the absurdity of Nottingham Forest being promoted to the Premier League and not being able to play on the same playing field, having to take the losses from a lesser division and then being sanctioned on the back of the fact that the losses they had from the Championship compounded their issues in the Premier League. Oh, thanks very much. We've got a real chance of competing in this league then, haven't we? I would fix those sort of issues. I would fix the issues around the what's important in football. Is corruption and fraud important, or is PSA governance important? Because they make a big deal out of the fact that it didn't breach PSR.
Yeah.
If it didn't breach PSR, why did Chelsea do it?
Yeah.
Because it gained a material advantage. They got sporting advantage by being able to buy players by offshoring money. We all know it. It's about what do we do? Do we get this wonderful, pious, holier-than-thou moral attitude of going, well, we can clean house, and then watch what happens to the Premier League as a result of it? I might be wrong. It might increase the demand around the world.
Is it pious? I mean, it's the right thing to do if you want to clean house, clean house.
It's a little bit pious because you won't necessarily be prepared for the consequences of that. As long as you're happy, if we deconstruct the Premier League and then we deconstruct all the benefits of the Premier League economically as a result of that deconstruction, and we have lesser teams, lesser abilities, lesser players, will the fans that wanted that be any happier? They'll have had their moments and they'll have said that the game is now clean.
Yeah.
Or cleaner.
Okay.
But would that have achieved what? It's up to Masters and the executive. You know, I don't like the idea of people like Bruce Buck being in positions of influence that seem to have put people in positions of authority that seem to be adjudicating over outcomes that don't seem balanced, fair and equitable against previous punishments.
Yeah.
I don't like that little ball of war.
Good to speak to Paul Barber last night. I know, Simon, he's a man you admire. Somebody else, I'm not sure if you admire him, but we're going to hear from him. Burnley fan Alastair Campbell, of course, means what he says and says what he means, especially on matters political and the World Cup and Trump. I had a chat with him before he set foot in the Glasgow Sleeper last night. You're going to enjoy that, 12 noon.
With Mo Salah leaving, a lot of commentators have talked about the fact there's a lack of icons in the Premier League. Obviously, last year we had De Bruyne leave. You've had, over the course of the last few years, you've had Ronaldo back fleetingly. You've had Ibrahimovic here fleetingly. But the big boys don't come to the Premier League, do they? I mean, Haaland is probably the only global icon that is still there. Would that be fair? I mean, Son's not there anymore. De Bruyne's not there anymore. Salah's going. Kane, Ronaldo, Zlatan, all gone. Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham, Messi, Neymar. They would rather play elsewhere. Why?
That's a very good question. I don't think there's as many superstars today as the kind of has been in the past. Obviously, Messi, Ronaldo were the two superstars, and no one could get anywhere near them. And you know that doesn't mean to say that others like Neymar and Luis Suarez weren't. What I would say is, I think Real Madrid's, whatever you say about Manchester United, even when they're at their pomp, that I think are the biggest club in the world, the most attractive club in the world. You could argue maybe even Madrid in terms of just living there as well, I think is incredible. Barcelona too. You know, you think about that Barcelona team of Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Puyol, just absolutely sensational. And you look at Real Madrid now, Vinny Jr., Mbappe, Bellingham. Who else have I missed? I think the general ones, they've always had the very, very top ones have probably gone to La Liga and Real Madrid. Whereas the Premier League, it's almost like the next section down, but deep.
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan van range. Scoring a winning hat-trick of performance, payload and price. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van Centre.
Good afternoon, I'm Max Scott here with your sports headlines. With Roberto De Zerbi set to sign a 5-year deal at Spurs with a big survival bonus, Simon Jordan says if they go down, the Tottenham board should pay the price for relegation.
You can't turn around to the board of directors that have made appointments and say, well done, you've put us in the championship.
Yeah.
I mean, whether they get jumped or they get pushed, depends. I mean, they might see it as a challenge to come back and rebuild.
The Spurs fan base are already split over De Zerbi. Alan McCoist would have gone for a vibes-based appointment.
Had I got somebody that had absolutely lifted the place, whether it was a Harry, whether it was a Chris Hughton, whether it was Glenn, whatever it may be, just get the fans united, get the whole place, let's one of our own back.
We understand De Zerbi is still negotiating the finer details regarding his backroom staff. Now, Newcastle say they have no plans at the moment to replace Eddie Howe before the end of the season. Chief Exec David Hopkinson says he'll talk about the future when it's time. 17-year-old midfielder Erica Meg Parkinson's been called up to play for England's senior squad for the first time. Serena Wiegman's named her squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers against Spain and Iceland. And the Chelsea's Academy's new speed coach, former Team GB sprinter Adam Jamili, says he's already making a big difference. He's reminding young players everywhere not to forget power comes from the arms as well.
You wouldn't believe how little people, all of these footballers, they're using same arm, same leg, and I'm like, 50% of your power comes from your arms, so pump them, drive your elbows back and really work it, and you'll be surprised with how fast you really can move forward.
And England's players get one more tilt at a place in Tuchel's World Cup squad tonight. The game with Japan is live on talkSPORT from 7 p.m.
talkSPORT News.
It's now emerged that the teenage boy at the centre of the Scott Mills alleged sex offences was under 16, and the BMA has told us a junior doctor's strike next Tuesday is not inevitable. Amelia's got more in half an hour.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. Our expert technicians can't do your spring cleaning, but they can keep your car's inbuilt safety tech in top nick. Visit quickfit.com and book today.
Mostly cloudy with patchy rain, brightening up this afternoon a bit. A few showers around as well. Very mild and windy in the north.
Good afternoon, everybody. 5 minutes past 12 noon. It is now officially Tuesday afternoon, the last day of March. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan, and we are live on talkSPORT. Coming to you live, of course, on your TV. I was at that charity event last night in Mayfair. So many of you were telling me there you watch the show as well as listen to it, and that is fine by us. You can catch it anywhere these days, even Prime Video, if you wish to go there. Simon alongside me as we touch on a story, and when it drifts in and out of headline news, but it's back in the news today. You might recall, Simon, way back on January the 21st in 2019, I couldn't believe it's that far back, Emiliano Sala died, a footballer. He was 28 years of age. He died when the plane in which he was travelling crashed into the English Channel. Now, if you remember at the time, David Ibbotson, the pilot, age 59, also died in the crash. In fact, Ibbitson's body was never found. In their claim, Cardiff City argued that the French club Nantes were responsible, saying the flight was organised by the then banned football agent Willie Mackay, who they said was acting for Ligue 1 club Nantes during the transfer. Nantes denied this. Well, Cardiff City initially refused to pay the £15 million transfer fee to Nantes, but they were eventually ordered to do so by FIFA, and that was upheld by CAS. Following that, Cardiff took their case to the Nantes Commercial Court in 2023. Around that time, the Cardiff City chairman, Mehmet Dalman, I've known Mehmet for years, but he explained why the club were continuing to take legal action.
Can you explain to me why we shouldn't be? We bought a young man at the prime of his career, in good faith, somebody without our knowledge, put him in an unfit airplane and threw him in dangerous time of the day, or night in this case. And unfortunately, 2 people died of it. Why is it that it's Cardiff that has to then write a check out for as much as that? Cardiff is not a wealthy club. We can't afford this. So I don't see why people say that we're just after money. We just want to get some justice in this. It's one of those things that I think you have to run its course.
And run its course it did. So there was another episode to come in this very unfortunate and sad story just yesterday, Simon. At Nantes Commercial Court yesterday, Cardiff City's claim was dismissed. Now, they were instead ordered to pay Nantes €300,000 in damages, plus an additional €180,000 in legal fees. My question to you, Simon, is how unseemly has it become to witness clubs, in this case Cardiff and Nantes, engage in what's become a 7-year-long battle over a footballer's death? In the commercial world of football, is there simply no space for morality?
Well, seemingly not. I mean, it becomes about the argument of whose responsibility. I mean, if you buy something from somebody and it's an extremely valuable proposition, which is a human life, and also a very valuable commodity as a footballer in terms of the amount of money you paid for him, I would have assumed that you wanted to assume responsibility for getting him to you, rather than leaving it in the hands of other people. It seems like a deeply unprofessional set of circumstances by both football clubs, which might have made them conclude that they should both drop hands. I mean, Cardiff would quite happily drop hands on the financials because he wasn't their player, and they paid for something they didn't get. The club not would be looking at it going, well, we sold you something, and surely it must have been your responsibility to have got it to you, so why should we lose out on the financials of it? Ignoring the principle of the fact that the real people that lost in this were the young man that lost his life and his family. And it's unedifying, but it's commercial reality. I'm in Nantes' position. I would be saying, well, I sold you something. You paid me for it, or you should be paying me for it. You should have been taking care of the responsibility of getting it to us. It wasn't part of my responsibility to deliver this player to you. It must have been yours. All of that flies into the position of, what are we arguing about? If you're Nantes and you are expecting to get paid £15 million, I don't know if they've been paid or not at this money. I'm assuming that there's still payments that are due, and not only will this have to trigger court case costs and damages, they'll have to trigger the other installments.
That's right. They were ordered to do so by FIFA.
Yeah.
And that was upheld by CAS.
Yeah, I mean, whichever way you cut it and slice it and dice it, if you're Nantes, you would feel someone's got why would Nantes take the moral position? I mean, the sensible thing I would have thought to have been was to find a situation where both people can metaphorically, excuse the expression, live with the outcome.
Yeah.
Which is, let's not make this an unedifying proposition.
Well, that's it.
It's £15 million. Let's settle on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and find a solution to this, and then see who became entrenched in that position. It would appear that Cardiff are saying we never got what we paid for. Not saying we sold you something. It's, it was your responsibility to get in there, and all of these arguments get blown up in the ether. And the morality side of things is only really for the family to argue about how awful that looks for them.
Well, exactly. I mean, Cardiff were also, Simon, seeking damages. Following the verdict,
how they could be seeking damages.
Following the verdict yesterday, Cardiff City's legal team said, we deeply regret that the court did not recognise Nantes' liability in this tragedy. We initiated these proceedings so that the full truth of the case could come to light in respect of Emiliano Sala's memory. Now, the last line, that's one thing. The last line They say more than ever, there's an urgent need to strengthen safety and ethical standards in the management and protection of players so that such a tragedy can never happen again. Now,
but that was their gift. But that's their gift.
What do you mean their gift?
But that was their gift. They could have taken responsibility for the transmission and the transit of this young man.
It was their responsibility.
Well, clearly it must have been defined that it became their responsibility because once they bought it, it's sold as seen. Sorry, I know that sounds like an awful terminology when we're talking about a human being.
No.
But the courts must have found somewhere, despite the protestations of Cardiff and what they wanted to bring out into the transparent, clear blue sunshine to be able to show that the sunlight's the best disinfectant, it must have landed, whether it's a perverse decision in their minds, that the obligation was theirs. Because if the obligation was not, then it would have been found in Cardiff's favour, and the argument would have been that Cardiff shouldn't be paying for something that the responsibility to deliver it wasn't performed by the selling club.
Yeah.
So I look at it and go,
yeah.
Whenever I've signed a player and paid money for a player, I've assumed that there's an element of responsibility of getting this player to us. We've flown private jets before. I've had players flying on private jets. And in this instance, I mean, there wasn't a need for a private jet. I mean, if Cardiff dictated, we want this player here on this particular time, and the only way you could have got there was a private jet, and then Cardiff said, we've got no responsibility for the private jet, it's on you, we want to make that part of the contractual obligations that you have to comply with, then I don't see how the argument could be ruled against them. Clearly, put aside the morality of arguing over a footballer like he's a piece of meat, the fact this footballer is now dead as a result of a situation where he was put into a plane that wasn't fit for purpose, flown by a pilot that couldn't operate equipment at night. All of these things seem to be absolutely appallingly flawed. Why the player can't take... I mean, there's a part of me that thinks that players have got to take responsibility for their own safety and be... I mean, I wouldn't walk into a private jet and get on a private jet if I didn't know exactly what the company was and what I was flying into. But because I'm an older man and understand the world a bit better and are used to it.
Poor Salah had to trust the process in which he was engaging.
But no one seems to have cared about it.
No.
Neither club have seemed to have cared about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Nantes' argument will be is, we sold you a player. It was your responsibility to get him to you. Why should we, primarily on a moral argument, lose out on the investment we put into this player? We paid for this player. We paid for this player. We paid this player's wages.
Yeah.
We developed him. We might have paid for a transfer fee in a previous transaction. So why would we be the ones that lose out? Cardiff would be arguing, I suspect, that it was your job to get him to us. And it's just, we shouldn't be talking like it's a DHL package, but it's been framed in that way, and the commercial argument hasn't gone away. And I think the reality of it is that probably Cardiff have got what they are entitled to get, which is, why didn't you take care of this boy? Why didn't you make sure that the manner in which he was arriving with you was the best possible way? Why did you leave it to someone else? And if you did book it, and it was you, then you're culpable. If you didn't book it, which is their argument, and you weren't involved in it, why weren't you? And then the other side of the argument could be, why didn't you look after this young man? You just made a bundle of money off him. But the legal argument must have been constructed on where the liability lay for the travel arrangements.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. I mean, who was involved? It was Willie Mackay, wasn't it?
Willie Mackay, the agent. There was a lot. There's been a lot of finger pointing, and that still goes on. Mackay arranged for a private plane via flight organizer David Henderson. Henderson wasn't available, so this man David Ibbotson flew the single-engine Piper Malibu aircraft.
Which he wasn't qualified in, was he?
Well, it was later revealed that Ibbotson, an amateur pilot, did not have a commercial license.
I mean, what the hell is that about?
And was not legally permitted to fly in the dark.
I mean, so my recollection was correct.
Yeah, Henderson was jailed for 18 months.
What is that about?
Found guilty of recklessly endangering the safety of an aircraft. In any other industry, Simon, would this not be labelled a major scandal?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd think that there was a whole duty of care. I mean, obviously the player is a grown man. He's got to take responsibility of his own travel. And to some extent, he's gone along with the travel arrangements. And the man's gone to prison. So ultimately, the man that booked it's not an industry issue. This is an issue of individuals making decisions. Now, whether you think that the selling club has a greater duty of care, do they? On what basis do they have a greater duty of care? Contractually, do they have a duty of care responsibility? Morally is not about what we're arguing about here. We're arguing about the legalities of it all. The boy could get himself onto a plane, a train, an automobile of some shape or description and get himself to his new home, like the rest of us would do in any other walk of life.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure the industry should be culpable. I mean, I look at the arguments and whether Willie Mackay profited out of this transaction. as an agent and got an agent's fee out of it. I mean, I've had dealings with him, not on my list to do things
I
again.
think in this occasion he did not.
Fine, so then he's got no commercial. But how could they have put themselves in a situation where a boy is flying in a plane with somebody that doesn't really know? I know he probably they'd have argued this guy has flown this plane many times before, never had an issue.
Yeah.
So why he had one now, God only knows. But the fact of the matter is both of them lost their lives. And the people that decided to put these people in that position, one of them went to prison, and the other one doesn't appear to have benefited from it, but he was involved in the decision-making process, and the club sat on the sidelines going, I've got my money, I've got my player.
Yeah. I mean, it is all... I mean, that was my original question too. How unseemly has it become that we're witnessing the clubs engage in what's become a 7-year-long battle over a footballer's death?
So do you...
I mean, we've seen no real root and branch review.
I know. Well, I mean, you have, because a court case has determined that the pilot wasn't able to fly this plane, wasn't in a position to understand...
He didn't have a commercial license.
So all of that brings you into a situation where the guy that booked him has gone to prison. So there is a consequence. It's in no way, shape or form representative of the consequence that this young man's family has had visited upon them.
Yeah.
And the young man himself that died in the plane, and the pilot that was put into a situation that he should never have been in, but put himself in there voluntarily, I suspect.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine that economics played a part in it. I would imagine they've gone, let's do it the cheapest way we possibly can. Lovely, isn't it?
It's a very, very sad story. It really is such a sad story. And I remember Emiliano Sala at the time.
Was excited about coming to play in the Premier League.
He was excited about coming here. And he was excited about the prospect of making his name in English football. Sadly, age 28, he perished in that plane crash.
£15 million on a wonderful young man with a future. If you spent £15 million on a painting, you'd probably make damn sure that painting was put into the prerequisite amount of storage, capability to protect it in the right travel arrangements. Yet this kid seems to have been just chucked on a plane. Nobody cared about it.
Yeah, the sad story of Emiliano Sala.
Derek Chisora is retiring after this weekend, so maybe Del Boy can come in and do a better job than all these other guys.
Maybe.
I've also spoken to him. He's going to come in and walk up and down Simon's back this morning to try and sort that out.
Jason Schiffman, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Simon. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Well, I wish you back better anyway.
Thank you, mate.
My view is that I think that we need to bring a manager in that's going to sign a contract so the players believe that manager is going to be there next season. I don't think it's a great look when you sign these managers up and they're only signed temporarily, because then all of a sudden the players don't seem to have the same respect for that manager, because they're thinking, well, he's not going to be here in a few weeks. Do I think that this guy can come in and do a job? I certainly hope so. I think the fans are behind the players at the moment. I think I saw an amazing atmosphere, even though we lost 3-0. And I just think this is still the team that got 4 points out of City this season. So the players in that squad that are capable of winning games, but we do need a manager that's capable of getting the best out of them.
Yeah, I mean you're on your final chance, are you not, Jason? It's critical now.
Listen, it's almost not in our hands, because if West Ham get that win, then all of a sudden we're in this position where we're looking.
Jason, just
around us.
Just a quick one here. So there's an element of concern about De Zerbi. Do you share that concern? And who would you go for in this situation? Everyone's talking about maybe Glenn Hoddle or Tim Sherwood.
The reason a lot of fans that call up this show get the hump when they hear about Thomas Frank.
It is now Tuesday lunchtime. Jim White, Simon Jordan, live in talkSPORT, live on your TV as well. World Cup playoffs tonight. We touched on this earlier on with BetMGM's Sean Martin. We'll get to those because remember, Italy could have been travelling to Wales this evening. Not to be. Italy up against Bosnia and Herzegovina. Before that, we want to talk Roberto De Zerbi. I'm delighted Italian football expert Daniele Fisichella joins us at this stage. Daniele, De Zerbi, a proud Italian, born in Brescia. Is his personality the right fit for what would be a relegation battle?
I'm not so sure, Jim, to be fair, and I am a bit baffled that De Zerbi, in the end, if he's going to accept this job, will walk in such a dangerous situation for the club and for him. But it fits the character. De Zerbi is a very uncompromising person that makes his own mind, and is very stubborn in his decision. So this decision, if he accepted to go to Tottenham after having turned them down twice already this season, as is understood, it would be, of course, a surprising one, but one where perhaps De Zerbi feels that the conditions now are right for him. Of course, yeah, it is surprising because, if he takes them down, his reputation is somehow tarnished in a way, and perhaps he might be given the opportunity to walk away from Spurs. It depends what kind of agreement they reach. But also, it is surprising. I almost compare it to the situation when he went to Shakhtar Donetsk after Sassuolo. Nobody really expecting to do that, and many people advise him against it, to be fair, but yet he was convinced by the project, which unfortunately was cut short due to the conflict. But this is a very difficult and complex situation compared to that one, of course.
What is this? I mean, we talk about the decisions he's making now as if he's some stellar manager with a massive reputation. I mean, he's managed Brighton and he's managed Marseille, not won anything. So what would he be doing? I mean, the opportunity to manage Tottenham Hotspur, a big Premier League club that's in a moment of great difficulty. When you say his reputation, well, what is the reputation?
The reputation is of a manager that gets his teams to play well, although I do agree that at the moment Tottenham do not need to play well. They need to win games and potentially win games by a 1-0 scoreline, which they haven't been able to do it, and De Zerbi is not renowned for that. But the reputation is of a manager where players follow him, they bet in, they like the way he manages them. He has taken Brighton to the highest ever finish in the Premier League. He took Sassuolo in Italy from a mid-table or to salvation to a more comfortable position. And he did leave Shakhtar Donetsk before the conflict as the top of the Ukrainian league. With Marseille, I take your point, he hasn't won anything, but can you really win anything in the league where PSG competes? He took them to the Champions League, and I think he did extremely well there. But of course, the reputation is of a divisive manager. He's a manager that you either love or hate. But what concerns me the most at the moment is the fact that Spurs need to win ugly. As Darren Lewis was saying yesterday on kickoff, I was listening to him, they need to win 1-0. Now, I looked at the record of De Zerbi in the last 7 seasons. He has only won 14 league games by a 1-0 scoreline across many spells. So it is difficult for him in this situation. And of course, he will need the preseason. But yeah, it's a strange one as well.
Let's look at a big night for your Italy. Of course it is. Come on, Daniele. What are you thinking? As I said, they could have travelled to Wales. They haven't. They're up against Bosnia, Herzegovina. What's your thought?
It is going to be a tough and difficult game, as everyone expects. It has been pictured in Italy almost like a generational challenge to give the youngsters finally the opportunity to watch Italy at the World Cup, and they've been missing for so long. But it also been pictured perhaps beside what the challenge really is. Some people are describing the pitch where they're going to play as a muddy, small pitch, almost like hell, almost like if they're stepping into to the Maracana of Belgrade or the Maracana of Rio de Janeiro. It is nothing like, but that tells you how short of confidence, how short of self-belief this Italy side was. I was in Bergamo last week to watch them beat Northern Ireland. A very poor first half, and then when they upped the tempo, they managed to get the job done. The problem is, I don't think this Italy side can play much better than what they did 4 days ago. It's all about self-belief and the confidence that these players and the manager Gattuso need to carry. On paper, Italy are better than Bosnia, for sure. Bosnia are ranked 66th in the world, and Italy are 13th. But Italy actually had never been close to qualify to the World Cup directly. Bosnia were. So they probably are confident as well. It looks like Italy have been prepared for the playoff since the match they won defeat in Norway 3-0 against Ireland and co. So, yeah, I think they were in that mindset. It's all about getting back to the basics. If they concede the first goal, it could be drama. But I think if they stick to the guns and try to keep it tight and compact, they might well be able to scrape it.
Okay, Daniele, come on. Forza Italia. Daniele Fisichella, thank you so much. Interesting, Simon. The Bosnia and Herzegovina FA have accused an Italian soldier of spying on a Bosnian training session ahead of the playoff. Reports emerged from the Bosnian media suggesting the soldier could be seen crouching behind a fence recording the players. I love that. Touch of Spygate. Who was involved in that? It was Derby, wasn't it?
And Bielsa.
And Bielsa, Leeds. Got a bit of that. Let's see what they're up to in their training session. 12:30. Alastair Campbell, Simon's best chum, is on the way. Back on Thursday, Simon and Willie exchanged a fair bit of banter in the boxing hour on that day going into the fight.
I said, I think you're going to get beat, is what I said, Willie.
Is that what you said?
I did, yeah. I did. I'm happy to eat crow.
Simon, have you ever boxed a day in your life?
No, I haven't, no.
You should have no comment on boxing whatsoever. You should leave it to the boxers.
We will see.
Because you've never had a fight in your life.
We will see. And when you have an opinion on something in life you've never done, we can have a conversation about that as well.
The only thing you can box, Simon, listen to me. The only thing you can box is box in Tesco's shopping centre. Well, that's what you can box.
Willie, if you lose that fight, you'll probably be working in there.
You shouldn't give any... Hey, but I've got plenty.
Good.
I don't need to
well,
go
let's
anywhere.
see you win.
I don't do this for the money. I do it for peace.
Good, fantastic, good. So when we see on Monday, if you've won, you'll be able to say all this. But don't lose, Willie, now. Don't lose. Whatever you do, don't lose.
But Simon, if you've never boxed a day in your life, and you've never felt a punch in your face, you should have no comment to boxing.
I'm not allowed an opinion.
In your life.
I'm not allowed an opinion.
Forget about this.
I'm not allowed
You're
an
not allowed an opinion because you've never boxed.
Okay.
You don't know.
All right. Well, hopefully my opinion will mean nothing.
Keep to the football.
But if I'm wrong, if I'm right, Willie, you are going to eat some crow, buddy.
Well, he didn't need to eat anything because the scores were wide. 99, 91, 98, 92, 98, 92. So, Willie, you got out that shift at Tesco on Sunday. Well done. Good morning.
Definitely. I got out of it nice and clear. Thank God I don't need to work in Tesco's no more. And we're on to the next one.
Is Roberto De Zerbi the right man to get Spurs through a relegation scrap? European football expert Dougie Critchley's told us De Zerbi was great at developing players like Alexis McAllister and João Pedro to get Brighton up to 6th.
He does have an amazing reputation for improving clubs, but over the short term, it's an entirely new style of play that might take a little while for the Spurs players to adapt to.
Tottenham have 7 games to avoid the drop, but Andy Townsend doesn't think the players have the stomach.
Most of them have looked like they've chucked it. Most of them have. Because, look, the truth of the matter is, if you're a player nowadays of some repute and they've got plenty of players in that bracket,
Well, they'll be away.
the easiest way for them to get out of the club is if they get
100%.
relegated.
More on this at talkSPORT.com as it unfolds. Now, daylight offsides are being trialled in the Canadian Premier League from this Saturday. It's an attempt at restoring some advantage to the attackers. Critics say it'll mean defences dropping deeper. Either way, it won't satisfy Ali McCoist's offside concerns.
I mean, I've got to say, some of the lines, I mean, see up in Scotland, the lines look as though they're getting drawn by a 2-year-old kid with a crayon. Do you know what I mean?
Ghana have sacked their manager Otto Addo just 72 days out from the World Cup. They're in England's group, of course. Elliot Anderson's a dead cert to be there, barring injury. But does he prefer playing 6 or 8?
Oh, it's a tough one. Yeah, as I said, I really like both positions. I think they bring out different sides of my game. As an 8, I probably need more goals and assists.
Anderson's giving Lee Carsley the credit for his England place as number 6. It was Carsley who first got Anderson to drop deeper in training at St George's Park. England versus Japan is live on talkSPORT from 7 p.m. tonight.
Top boxing promoter Ben Shalom is in the building. He'll be joining us live in the show for our final part today at 12:45. A lot of big fights on the horizon. It's fair to say that Burnley have a very big fight on their horizon if they are to stay in the Premier League. The reason I say that was that last night, and I don't think Simon was all that impressed when I told him, I was in the company of a man you could describe as a Burnley superfan. He travels home and away, and he is the political analyst, podcaster, Alastair Campbell. He also was in attendance in Mayfair last night at the Football Beyond Borders charity event, and he spoke well about the charity and the work that it does. When it comes to Brighton, though, who have won just 4 in 31, Burnley, I should say, who have won just 4 in 31 and are just on 20 points above Wolves, it does look as if it's going to be championship football for Burnley next season. And I said to Alastair after the event, well, was that not really where you might have expected Burnley to be?
I knew it'd be tough, and it has been tough. I knew that we'd have about 20 minutes to half an hour in every game. We played really well. I knew that we'd get 3 amazing goals in 7 minutes at Selhurst Park. But, you know, I've got to be honest, I love the Championship. Now, I do.
That's just as well.
I do. I love the Championship. But listen, we can still win 7 games, 21 points. Who knows what will happen?
Is Scott Parker the right man to guide you straight back up?
Well, I like Scott, and I think that, you know, he's taken a bit of stick this season, but I would be very, very happy with him staying.
The World Cup, so much is going to be going on the pitch, but as well as that, so much off the pitch as well, we would think. Am I right in thinking that you would go to a World Cup finals, but not on this occasion, and you're not going to go to the USA because of Trump?
I've been to several World Cups when Scotland have been playing, because I'm a Burnley fan, but I'm also a Scotland fan, but I'm not going to go. And it's what America is becoming. And listen, I've got nothing against people who do go, and I think loving football is great and loving your country is great, but I just think sometimes if you're in my position, you've got a platform, take a stand. I genuinely worry, if you look at the direction of travel in the United States under Trump at the moment, I think he has his eyes on this World Cup in pretty much the same way as Hitler had his eyes on the 1936 Olympics, and I don't want a part of it.
You honestly believe that, Alastair? I mean, you had some very strong words for the gathering tonight about Trump, but it's fair to say you loathe the man.
Madeleine Albright, who was Clinton's Secretary of State, who came from Eastern Europe, came to Britain, then went to America, ended up as Secretary of State. She wrote a book before Trump became when Trump was becoming president first time around, and the book was called Fascism: A Warning. We should read it, and we should heed her message, which is that once you start to undermine truth, once you start to undermine the judiciary, the media, free media, once you start to behave as though you are all-powerful and nobody else matters, that is a very dangerous path, and I don't particularly want to be there right now.
Do you think at this World Cup, Alastair, that players will use the platform they're given to impart messages of their own? Or should they just stick to football and nothing else?
Well, it's up to them. I mean, I think it will become political because he'll make it political. But look, you know, I'm sure you and I agree, Jim, that Scotland are probably going to win the World Cup.
Yes.
And that is only going to happen if they focus absolutely in football. I don't bet, but if I did, I would put a bet on him going to the Scotland training camp to remind us all that his mum was Scottish, and that's his second team in the World Cup. So they'll have a judgment to make. But no, listen, they've got to get on and play football. And I've got nothing against them going. I think it's fantastic that Scotland are going. I felt really sorry for Ireland and Wales and Northern Ireland the other day. I really want Kosovo to get there, because that would be an incredible story if they beat Turkey. But anyway, I've got a train to catch.
You're in the Glasgow Sleeper tonight. You're a fan of the show, and I'm delighted about that.
I'm a fan of you, Jim.
Alastair, is there any history there between you and Alastair?
He's just a freeloading Burnley fan who freeloads in people's boardrooms and opines on things that most of us don't agree with.
Oh, hang on, he was in your boardroom once, was he?
Yeah, I think I threw him out. I think Theo Pafitas threw him out of his boardroom once as well. Not my cup of tea. Not predisposed to take anything that Alastair Campbell says particularly seriously.
I'm not sure that he's all that far off the mark about Trump during the World Cup, because
he concurs with your views, isn't he?
It will be Donald Trump's World Cup.
You found fertile ground to have a little chat with one another and have a little loving. You know, when you talk about people that make decisions back in the day and influence the way that the countries have gone and what's happening in those countries, you might want to have a little look at his involvement with Tony Blair and the decisions that were made in this country against the will of the people.
Well, all I can tell you was he spoke extremely well last night at what was Football Beyond Borders charity event. In the meantime, it's time for this.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
I think when it comes to the Real Deal, and had they been in the final tonight, the last one-off game to try and get you to the World Cup finals, Wales boss Craig Bellamy would very much would be in the Real Deal category.
Wales should be a bus.
They're in the World Cup playoff losers match tonight. Wales against Northern Ireland. What is the point of that game?
None. I mean, I guess it just raises a few quid. I mean, it's a bit undignified, isn't it? I mean, talk about ring out the games. What is the purpose of that?
Exactly.
Just look what you could have won, and now you get to play for nothing.
Yeah.
I assume it must have some seeding perspective for the Nations League or some nonsense.
I know, Sam. I think that this really is one game that falls into the category where you wouldn't object to the players saying, no, not for us, because there's nothing at stake. But having said that, as the Welsh approach it, we got a bit of a rallying cry from Craig Bellamy, who says, Wales, and I love the job. Don't worry about me. I love the job.
The heartbreak, it actually was more than I anticipated. But to gain the energy, to refocus and want to go again, is definitely still there. I really enjoy this. Look, we'll talk more after it probably as well, because it's, my mind is just so focused on Northern Ireland at the present moment. But yeah, it's the best role in the world.
The best role in the world. You might be saying it, but it's hard to believe that he believes what he's saying.
Well, he probably does mean what he's saying, but they missed an opportunity. You want to qualify for the World Cup. You've got the opportunity of playing at home against a Bosnia-Herzegovina side that are no world beaters, and you didn't take it. And all the rallying calls of attack, and all that sort of stuff, they didn't take the opportunity. They missed an opportunity like so many of his predecessors that have had more talented rosters than he's got. They've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. They've done it again. You know, again, it's the curse of Jordan that tips somebody and ultimately it goes the wrong way, which is why Willie Hutchinson should have been delighted I tipped against him, because I tipped the Welsh of all the home nations to have gone through. You know, not that I was interested in any of them, quite frankly, but I was more interested in Wales going through because I like Craig Bellamy. I want him to be successful.
No, I was with you on that. I thought the Welsh would have done it.
No, they missed. Listen, you can sit there and you can. I don't think he'll make any excuses. I don't think he's that sort of personality.
No.
But they snatched defeat from. They should have beaten Bosnia-Herzegovina. Not because it's a gimme, not because they're entitled, but they should have had. You know, what else do you want? Do you want Faroe Islands? Do you want San Marino in a playoff? You've got to play someone that's relatively decent.
Yeah.
And you had to win it. You had all of the opportunity. Everything was weighted in your favour, and you didn't do it, and you missed out, and you got to go back to the drawing board.
And now the playoff losers, Wales and Northern Ireland, meeting a friendly. Wow. Anyway, Craig Bellamy, the real deal. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in-branch review online at selcobw.com. Boxing promoter Ben Shalom joins us after this.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's Real Deals at selcobw.com.
Thomas Tuchel has a whole lot fewer Arsenal players than he might have imagined in the coming days, because 10 Arsenal players have now withdrawn not just from England duty but from international duty. Eze, Gabriel, Hincapié, Madueke, Rice, Saka, Saliba, Timber, Trossard, Zubimendi. 4 Arsenal players had originally pulled out of international duty at the start of last week, a day after the Carabao Cup final, a match that they lost to Manchester City. They were Gabriel with a knee injury, Saliba recurring pain in his left ankle, Trossard a hip injury, and Eze a calf problem. Now Zubimendi and Hincapié are the latest to withdraw. In fact, both Saka and Rice joined the England camp on Friday, but didn't feature in the draw with Uruguay on the same day, and now they've withdrawn. Sir Alex Ferguson used to remove players from international duty. In 2011, he described friendlies as a waste of time. Arsenal invincible Martin Keown is in our midst. Martin, are Arsenal being hit with a disastrous injury crisis, or is Arteta doing a Fergie?
Well, there's a lot of players that are injured going into this international. I hope that you're not making it as an inference that Arsenal are deliberately taking players out, because I think they're genuinely injured, Jim. So let's just go through each one. So Eze didn't make the cup final.
Do you think all of them are genuinely injured?
Odegaard didn't make the cup final. They've been disappointed to have done so. I think there was another player in there as well. So 3 players missed the cup final. Zubimendi actually he played in the first game for Spain. He's got injured in that game. So I make that 4 of them. Gabriel, who's been pulled out of the squad, got injured early in the season playing Brazil and was out for 2 months.
big fight build-up on talkSPORT with DAZN. Watch Derek Chisora versus Deontay Wilder this Saturday, only on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.
Let's finish with a spur of boxing today, and I don't mean Simon and myself, although there would only be one winner there, as we all know. This weekend, Deontay Wilder and Derek Chisora go head-to-head at the O2 in London, and it actually begins a run of big heavyweight cards, and the man who joins us in studio this lunchtime is going to be in and around those big fights. The chief executive of Boxer, he is Ben Shalom. Ben, no direct involvement with Wilder or Chisora, but that doesn't mean I can't ask you about it. It's the 50th professional fight for both Chisora and Wilder. What do you think of this?
First off, I can't believe we're still speaking about Derek Chisora. Incredible renaissance. I remember a couple of years ago even looking at fights and certain broadcasters saying, please be careful, Derek should retire. And he's gone on and he's beaten fighters and he's come back. I think for me, one fighter that should have retired is Deontay Wilder. So I think, look, both of them at the end of their careers, I think Chisora's got a lot more left than Deontay Wilder, I have to say. And
you think Wilder's a spent force?
I'm surprised to see him in the ring, to be honest.
Really?
He's earned a huge amount of money. I'm surprised, but fair play to him. You know, he obviously thinks he's got something left in him, but if you look at his last 2 or 3 fights, he really looks completely finished.
Wow. I know you're not that interested in how it goes. Is that because of your spat with Deontay?
No, I just think he's a moron. I think his behaviour is moronic. But the outcome, I think, probably, I would say it's a turd of a fight and has no substance to it. But the thing is, that would be undermining Chisora, because Chisora always goes into the ring and gives you something. He'll always go and give you some honesty about what his performance would entail. You go to watch Derek Chisora fight, you're going to watch a fight. Yeah. Now, I would say on the basis of that, I think Wilder's washed up. That's why he's making so much noise. And I think that Chisora will win this fight. Insofar as it leads to, I don't know, because according to Derek, he's going to retire, so it leads to nowhere. And I don't see Wilder as a force in the heavyweight division anymore. So where it leads him, God only knows. But it will, you know, if he were to beat Derek Chisora, he'll have to beat him. Whereas I think Chisora will beat Wilder because he's an avatar of what he once was.
Okay, well, you can watch it live on DAZN. Fast forward to April the 11th, and Ben, you really come into your own here on the card of Fury Makhmudov. On that night, you've got a host of fighters in action. I'll get to Fraser Clark, but Jamie TKV and Richard Riakporhe, what are you thinking?
Represented them both for a long time, so it's a big fight. It's a 50-50 fight. It's a fight that I didn't expect to happen. Maybe even a year ago. Jamie TKV's just been on an absolute rampage, and to be honest, I think Johnny Fisher was offered the fight for massive money. Dave Allen was offered the fight for massive money, and these guys that have never won the British title and have dreamt of winning the British title, I think that says a lot about how good they know Jamie TKV is. But Richard Riakporhe looks a different beast at heavyweight. He's an absolute monster, and he's been licking his lips for this opportunity. So it's a great fight. It really is. It's one of those shootouts. It's a unbelievable, probably the highest standard British title fight you're likely to get. These two are two really, really serious heavyweights.
And when you say you represent both, do you have mixed feelings as to the outcome?
Look, I've represented TKV and Fraser, and seeing Fraser wobble around like that and not look himself was a worrying thing for a promoter. I think you just hope that they come both out safe, they can both bang, they can both hit hard. They both want to have great careers ahead of them in the heavyweight division. So, look, the best man will win. Jamie TKV is from Tottenham and gets to fight at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and Richard Riakporhe's been, as I say, waiting for this moment a long time. So,
what do you think of this one, Simon? Ben, quite rightly upbeat about it. He represents both.
I think stylistically it's an interesting one, because I don't think Jamie TKV is the most attractive proposition to watch, but he wins fights and he's effective in them. Richard Riakporhe froze when he had his big moment, completely froze when he had his tilt at the world title against Chris Billam-Smith at Selhurst Park, the home ground of the team that he supports, my old club. I like Richard. There's never been any doubt about Richard's ability and power at cruiser, or probably at heavyweight now. It's all about what goes on between the ears and what he believes in. I mean, if he hits Jamie TKV, he'll hit Jamie TKV harder than he's been hit by anybody else, because Richard Riakporhe can bang. But I just think Jamie's in such a great run of form that I can't... Listen, when I tip somebody, it's the other one that wins. So I should best keep myself to myself. But I think it'll be. Listen, Jamie deserves all the credit he's got.
Yeah.
He hasn't got a lot of credit. He didn't get credit from me in the last fight against Fraser Clark in terms of before the fight. He was exhilarated that he won it. Dave Allen going off and fighting Philip Hergovich. You can understand why he's taken that fight. But Dave said he wanted to fight for a British title, or more to the point, his grandfather wanted him to fight for it.
Yeah.
But look, it's a good domestic fight.
Yeah,
Absolutely
it is. And Ben, I mean, if Wilder Chisora makes us shrug our shoulders, this one doesn't.
Look, it's a proper fight, and the best of their careers ahead of them, especially with Richard. I think, as Simon said, he did freeze. He had it all set up.
What happened to him?
He's a Crystal Palace fan, been building towards a world title his whole career. Managed to get him that big night, and he did freeze. And all I would say is, I used to watch him get out the ring, literally shaking because of making weight at the cruiserweight. His legs were like that. And he's a beast. He's a 6'6" man with a wide frame, and he looks healthy for once, and he looks big, and he looks strong, and he probably should have gone up to heavyweight many years ago, but he's here now. He's not taken any sort of punishment in the game. So look, he'll fancy his chances. He wants to get to the top and be in the big heavyweight fights, and but TKV's got the experience in the division.
April 11th will be upon us before we know it. Fraser Clark goes in against Justice Hooney. You saw Hooney go close with Wardley at Portman Road, Simon. Reputationally, though, Ben, after 2 defeats in his last 3 fights, how much is on the line for Fraser?
Everything. I mean, to be fair, I've seen a lot of criticism of this fight, of myself, of putting him straight back in there, of wanting to take a big test. I think Fraser's at the stage of his career where that was a horrible night against Jamie TKV. One of the worst performances I've ever seen from him. He's likely ever to give. But he wants to prove it right, and he's only going to prove it right in a proper fight. And Justice Hooney, as you said, outclassed Fabio Wardley for 12 rounds before getting absolutely sparked out. Fraser Clark had a very good night against Fabio Wardley, and then a bad one. So look, this is his chance. He's a superb amateur. He's now with Joe Gallagher, a guy that I've wanted him to probably go with for a long time now, and he'll feel that he has an opportunity to right the wrongs. But don't get me wrong, Justice Hooney's an incredible fighter. And credit to Fraser Clark, because we see so many fighters have a bad night at the office and want to take a big, long, wide road. And he's jumped straight back in on a huge card against a formidable fighter, and it's a great fight.
He's got to win it, Simon. Fraser. He's got to find a way.
Well, I think it's the perfect fight for Fraser, because technically Fraser's very good. We don't doubt that because of his track record, his amateur career. He's at a level. We've questioned Fraser in other departments. Justice Hooney doesn't punch hard. Otherwise, if he did, he'd have knocked out Fabio Wardley. So I think it's a perfect fight for Fraser to rebuild from after the horror story of the performance against TKV. Obviously, I mean, Ben alludes to the fact he had a good night against Fabio Wardley. He also had a very bad night against Fabio Wardley.
Right.
So there's 2 versions of that particular fight. Yeah. Everybody likes Fraser. Everybody wants to see Fraser do well. This kid, Justice Hooney's a good fighter. We had Mick Francis on the other day.
Yeah.
The good thing about him is he doesn't hit that hard. So it gives Fraser an opportunity to stand in range and not necessarily be as fearful as he possibly might be after the.
I hope Fraser emerges with his head held high. Conor Benn has found a lucrative Zuffa payday, Ben, against Regis Prograis on April the 11th. So much for him. Any news about Chris Eubank Jr. that you can bring to us this lunchtime?
Yeah, we spoke to his team today. He's we're making his fight as we speak. He'll be back in October, November. It's a big fight. I think people will be surprised. He's at the stage of his career. We just talked about Fraser Clark. He's 35 years old. He needs the big fights. He needs the big names. He doesn't want to come back in a different fight or a different way round. He wants to box at 168. He wants to box at super middleweight, and he wants to get straight back in the mix. And it's a huge fight for him. It really is. And I'm excited because I can't announce it right now because I'll let the broadcaster do that. But it's a huge name. It's a huge fight. But I'm excited because he's healthy. He's fit.
What broadcaster? BBC?
We'll let that be announced. But I can't wait to see Chris because fitness-wise, strength-wise, he's in a position that I've not seen in a long time.
Who's he fighting, Ben?
I can't say. I've got to leave that to the partners involved. But it's as I say, it'll be a big fight and people will be surprised.
Listen, you've come into us and I'm delighted you've been here. Let's finish with this. Lauren Price in action this weekend. What are you thinking?
For me, the premier fighter in women's boxing, the best one. The unified world champion, the Ring Magazine champion. She's sold out Cardiff. She's got the biggest fan base in women's boxing. She'll be boxing on the BBC 2 an hour before the main event of Chisora Wilder, so no clashes there against Stephanie Aquino, who's coming unbeaten from Puerto Rico, a big, big fighter. And look, for us, the winner potentially goes on to fight Clarissa Shields, who I hope will be there on Saturday night, which for me is the biggest fight in women's boxing. Lauren Price, I believe, is the only fighter that can and will beat Clarissa Shields, and she wants it. We're very close.